we are, but thank you very much.
Yeah, yep.
We need to look at our time period. I can't remember when we started, and, you know, I have a tendency.
August 14th is
Yeah,
our deadline.
okay. So I have a tendency to kind of blow past that. I think we're on target, but if we needed to do a 15-day, we just need to keep that on the list. So that was the first thing on my,
I had
bring
August
that up
14th
today.
was our
August
60-day
14th,
deadline
60th day?
on the ground rules. And then we did have a tentative August 11th date reserved. I don't know if we don't conclude tomorrow,
Hopefully
if
we
that
can
still
wrap it up.
works.
Hopefully we can wrap it up tomorrow.
And that was kind of, I mean, that was actually basically the first thing I was gonna hit on today as well was.
See, great
was-
minds. I mean, isn't it
Exactly.
amazing?
It is the first bullet point.
I mean, sometimes I wake up at night and I say, oh, I think Brian's thinking about this right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, maybe you're,
Wow.
That scares these guys over here. They say, whoa, that can't be true.
could be.
Probably is though.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to make the next 2 days as productive as
bet.
possible.
Yeah, I think we can.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd be able to get, I think, to make it as productive as we can be, like with the sake of interest-based bargaining. I have a lot of questions that I think we're gonna need specific people answering. I didn't know if it's possible if we can get more people down here on your side, just so we can put our minds together and really figure it out the next 2 days.
I think the answer to that is yes.
Cool.
And we already had some preliminary discussions about some of those topics that we know that the chief is gonna need to answer, and maybe some HR and payroll people, so
Sweet. Yeah.
we are preparing for exactly
Okay,
that.
cool. Yeah, I've got, mostly, I don't think we're too far off on a whole bunch of stuff. I just
Good.
have some basic questions, just trying to understand your thought. I'm like, what's the point of countering something if we're doing the same thing? I'm just not understanding it.
Yep.
You know, so that was the big thing, was just having people here, we can
That makes
get it
sense to
figured out.
me, and that's what we're prepared to do.
Sweet.
What I wanted to start with is, you know, just do an inventory of what you have for us by way of feedback first this morning. We have a nearly final, maybe final, grievance arbitration, contract grievance arbitration article that we want to talk through with you, but I need to go over it with the team one last time. We just got it circulated a few minutes ago internally. So we're going to do that after we break, and depending on what your targets are and your primary objectives this morning, we'll figure out who we need to get to come down here and address some of those things. I know on the overtime and vacation piece, we already knew we were going to need to give you some answers to questions and have some discussion about how things work. Part of that's for my own education. So that's where we are. I know we had sent y'all a ABL proposal, vacation leave proposal, and promotions proposal. What are the other things that we have outstanding, Janet?
I have a tracking list going.
I know we're waiting for some responses from y'all on some articles we had given you a while back.
Yeah,
But I'm
so-
sure that goes into some of the
Yeah,
questions you
yeah,
have. so-
maintenance of standards, work hours again, vacation leave, promotions, business leave, payroll deduction, the appointed positions, funding obligations,
Certain incentive pay.
yeah, and I have some counters ready to go on those. The big thing was, again, I just want to understand the thought process from your guys' side, and then maybe, you know, I can modify the counter where it kind of fits in line with what we're both trying to accomplish here.
Okay.
I hate to send a counter that's, you know, absurd if we're trying to do the same thing. There's just a misunderstanding, miscommunication somewhere.
Yeah, we respect and appreciate that very much. You know,
Okay.
that's, and that's actually the way it's supposed to work, you know, and every time I start one of these relationships, and the city of Irving has really been, you know, fabulous about this. You know, I built my law practice in the bargaining context, taking it away from lawyers, you know, whose response to a proposal from the association would always be, well, why would we do that? Instead of, is there a way we can do that? Or is there a way we can do something that accomplishes what your objective is that may be a little bit different than what you have in mind? Because that's the way this process is supposed to work. And if it works like it needs to, then the department gets better, employees feel like they're listened to, and we're accomplishing things. I think this is a rare opportunity here. I know when y'all went to the voters, you told everybody that, we're not looking to make big changes. We're not looking for something that's gonna cost a ton of money. We wanna, put down on a permanent, formalized basis the things that we have that we, know make this a good career, a competitive compensation, pay and benefits package. And over time, we want to achieve these staffing objectives. And so I think we're well on the way to hitting those key targets. And, as I see it and as my clients see it, that's a mutual promise that we've made to the taxpayers in this community. They support y'all. They expect you to be paid well and to have these benefits and to have the top quality fire service and so forth that they want. It's that kind of town. So I think we're on the right track.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
The only other articles I would note, Brian, at the last meeting, you gave us the investigation article and then the disciplinary matrix. We do have some red lines drafted, but I think we probably want to have conversation about that before we just, to your point about, extensive red lines. I think it'd be
Which
helpful.
number's investigation?
21 and
21.
22
Okay.
is the matrix. So, and those go hand in hand. So I think
Right.
when we have time set aside to just talk about that whole piece, I think we'll have some productive conversation there.
So why don't we go through the things that you feel like you need feedback on
Okay.
and get that targeted so we can go set that up and have our internal discussions about that.
Okay. So the one of the big ones again was that overtime article, how we figure out productive time worked and how it works on different paychecks in the same pay period or work period. How we're going to navigate that. I think that's a big one for us. That there's a lot of articles that kind of contingent based on how that whole process works. I think.
Okay? Help me understand that better. How does that connect to some of these other articles?
You're
Well-
talking about overtime?
Yeah, well, the overtime article, particularly the time worked kind of thing. So like Daniel kind of brought up a couple meetings ago was we have a 27-day work period. So how exactly does it work if somebody works there, they have a Kelly day, beginning of the 27-day pay period, and then 16 days later, it's on a different pay cycle. They call in sick or work overtime, whatever it may be. Are we pulling
Okay.
from a previous paycheck? Are we,
Right. I think we've got answers to that,
okay,
but we'll do that when we get back together.
okay. And then that kind of goes into the work hours one a little bit. Still working on the shift duty investigators. I think 28-day work cycle is probably where we're going to come back on. But I had a question regarding the 365-day work period for dispatch.
Yes.
Like how exactly that works. I mean, because could somebody call in sick in January and then in November work overtime? They're on the same pay period. Do they have to credit hour, or they're on the same work cycle? Like how does that work?
We will get you answers to that.
Okay.
I will tell you that is how they are operating today.
Yeah, I know.
Just so
and-
you're aware, and we have a letter, I believe, from the Department of Labor on that work
Perfect.
cycle. But in terms of kind of more operationally to your question about how they count it for sick leave or other things, we'll get you answers on
Yeah,
that.
and I think, we brought up the last meeting, I think that there was a reason we copied and pasted a lot from city policy, like, didn't really know how it all worked, but it's been
Right.
working for 20 or 30 years, like, why change it? So, I've got some stuff on, like I said, on cert pay, we can kind of go over a little bit. What else here? Had some questions I think we already discussed. Questions about vacation leave and the number. I think your counter is mostly, I mean, it's copy and pasted from city policy. Kind of figured that's what it would be. We just wanted to have a discussion about the 7 number, the 7 people off per day. I don't know if you got the spreadsheet or PowerPoint I sent regarding the formula we came up with for vacation spots needed, how many people we've added in the last 10 plus years since we've had 7.
We've got you some answers, and we'll make sure you understand our perspective on that.
I have a feeling most of my questions, you guys have some sort of, we just have to get to it. And then, I mean, we have a counter for staffing. I think the big thing for me with the staffing one is kind of, again, understanding your guys' process and kind of the budget. You know, like was mentioned last meeting, you know, we ran on not raising taxes. So there was comment made if it was done in less than 5 years, we would have to raise taxes. Trying to figure out how that all works, how taxes will be increased with our project in particular, when there's other projects that are 3 times what ours is, and that's not going to be a tax increase. But I think we want the same thing. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work within the budget, and I may need like a little basic budget, you know, brief 2-minute, this is how it kind of works. I've sifted through the budget a little bit. I am in no means a financial expert at all, so any sort of clarification I think would help us understand your guys' position a little better.
Okay?
But I mean, those are.
I don't think we have any problem with that. I think the general concept behind the staffing proposal that the city has put on the table is that you have the long-term plan that the city has for the fire department and for the other departments. You have the assumptions in those long-term plans about the anticipated and projected revenues. And it's a crystal ball process, you know, in terms of if we assume that we're going to fall somewhere within these ranges of additional revenues, the new personnel are going to cost this much in those budget cycles. And generally, the assumptions are we're not going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. The other programs are going to continue. And so I don't think it's constructive to get into an argument about whether or not there's a tax increase. Well, because you've got this money over here and you could use that money over there. I think that's going to be the answer to your question. I don't know specifically what those numbers are in Irving, but whatever the existing programs and projected programs are, you know, for infrastructure and public works and streets and drainage and utilities and all those other kinds of things, the budgetary assumptions are that those plans continue just like the fire department plan continues. But the specific answers that are here, you know, we'll try to get you answers to those questions. And we understand why it's important. You know, how did we come to these conclusions is important in establishing trust and making sure you understand that we're telling you the truth and being straight with you. Because you're going to have to go back to your members and tell them we support this and we recommend that you vote for it. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing for us is getting the understanding so we can sell it to the guys.
And their question is, why?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right.
Explain it to me.
Because we build that relationship here, you know, and you have confidence in what I tell you, I have confidence in what you tell me, you know, but the people that we're working for, they have to get there on their own. So.
And Brian, I think 62 positions over 5 years is massive. I think it's a commitment. It's no longer, it's going to be an agreement. We have to live up to that unless there's financial crisis. So it's a huge commitment on the city to go out there and do that. Any other department within the city gets 62 positions within 5 years would be throwing flips right now.
Well, so that I think is the crux of the staffing thing that our members are probably going to ask, is that they're aware that police has asked for 147 positions at approximately $18 billion. 5-year phase-in, there was discussion at making a 4-year phase-in. Well, you know, we've looked at a 3 or 4-year phase-in, now the discussion is 5. So my members are going to ask me that, is how did they fit, you know, how'd they come to, we're asking for 56 at 6.5 or 7 million, I don't know the exact number. and then they came with 147 positions, 18 million. Where's the, and again, 100% support the officers, like, we need police. Like, we've called them several times for help, like, I'm not denying that at all. But those are questions that our members are gonna ask, so.
Well, of course, the staffing dynamics on the police side are not going to be comparable to firefighter staffing positions. And I think the answer to your question about the 4 versus 5 years is that the administrative positions that our proposal puts in year one are necessary for the command staffing and incident command models to work in actual practice. If you got personnel that you can't effectively use in the field because you don't have the management oversight and so forth and so on, then you're not getting there. So I think that's part of the difference in the number. And I've said this before, but just so that everybody kind of keeps their eye on the ball, being able to accomplish 62 positions, in a 4 or 5 year process, subject to the budget. In other words, if that was a decision, can we still do what we want to do next year based on the numbers? This collective bargaining model has changed us from a scenario to where the city gets to review that every year. That's what makes this, in my mind, huge, like Orlando was just talking about, that we're making a contractual commitment to do that. Now, we do have a safety valve in there in terms of, an actual significant financial downturn. But we mean it when we put it in this contract, and we plan to do it, and we plan to find the money. And if we're short, we're going to have to make adjustments to get there. So I think that's part of the message to your members is that, in the old days, city management told us this is what they plan to do, cross our fingers, hope to die.
Yeah.
This time we're saying we're going to put it in writing and we're going to do it unless we can't do it.
And that would also be kind of another distinguishing characteristic of the positions that we're talking about putting in this agreement for fire versus what police has asked for and may or may not be getting in the next 5 years in the budget.
Yeah, no, I get that part completely. Like I said, I'm trying to understand as much as I can and kind of figure it out so we can explain it to the guys, but I understand it's contractual.
And I'll go out on a limb on this, okay? Because I suspect that if we were across the table with police, they would be hearing the same message about what we can actually contractually commit to as opposed to what we would like to be able to do.
Yeah. And kind of like I brought up last meeting, I mean, I've appreciated working with the city manager we have here. I mean, they've really, everything they said they're going to do, they've done it quicker than anticipated. So I've been impressed in the relationship and having it work.
Yeah.
Like I said, just from our side, trying to understand as much as we can. As you know, I'm sure firefighters are not easiest people to sell. So just being as prepared as we can be. I've heard
that.
Yeah, just being as prepared as we can. It's kind of the objective here. But like I said, I don't think we're far off from a bunch of stuff. We just need to, I think, put our brains together and figure it out and walk out of here hopefully tomorrow good to go. So.
One last thing, our friends at the Austin are not doing us any favors by putting caps on all our revenue sources and making us unfunded mandates. So we're kind of tied both ends. It's like there's no win for the city.
I've sat in these budget meetings and retreating, hearing all the different caps and no new revenue rate and all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm like, I don't know how you make it work, but I think that.
So what do y'all need first, second, and third to make progress today?
Let me sift through this real quick. I think the biggest thing is probably going to be that overtime article and the hours worked. I think there's several contingent on that one.
That was going to be my guess. Anything else?
Those three are contingent basically on that one.
Do you have a response on the ABL article yet?
Sort of. So I kind of wanted just to thought process on it, and let me pull it up. I've got kind of some specific questions about it. Bear with me here. So I don't think we're far off on the ABL thing. If I'm reading it correctly, kind of sounds like the chief has discretion to either let people take business leave or not take business leave, except for the conventions and the, some specific training and stuff. I mean, it sounds pretty open, which I don't have an issue with. Was that kind of the intention behind it? Flexibility?
That is the intention behind it.
Okay.
Obviously, what we had to do here is you have a proposal that kind of tracks the common pool-based ABL model. And the city looked at that. If the city was going to do a pool model, the city would want to have contributions from both sides to fund that pool, which is also prevalent in a lot of these other labor agreements. As you know, this proposal primarily tracks the City of Denton model, which works well in practice. I think provides adequate public paid time for firefighters to do things that are of a mutual benefit to the department and the public. And so this was the chief's preference. I think you know that the chief supports the association activities as they're outlined here, recognizes that they are good for the department, they're good for the employees, and that the taxpayers are getting their money's worth for paying for these activities, even though these aren't working at our house or on our apparatus. And so that's really the choice between the pool model. If we had a pool model, we'd be asking for your members to put, leave time in there to fund part of what the union's doing. And the city would be funding its part of that activity. We think this is simpler, less administrative cost. We think it'll work in this department because of the culture and the relationship with the chief. So that's my best answer to that question.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, got a good working relationship with the chief right now. My fear is that the next chief, we don't have that, and then it kind of, they kind of have the authority to, okay, well, you're not gonna go do this, or the biggest thing we have issues with right now is getting guys the ability to go get some sort of training from what we do, so we can, pass the workload off and get people prepared for the future.
I would just say that I think that this article has enough structure to where you don't have to worry about another chief coming in that has, an attitude, so to speak, and wants to try to start, pulling that back or something. I think there's enough structure in here that this is an enforceable article the way it's written. And I would just refer you, you've got the ability, to see how this works in Denton, and I think they've had a change in the chief structure up there under this language before. So anyway, y'all can.
And there is some reasonableness language too,
Yeah.
Brian, in that article. I mean, I obviously trying to strike a balance.
Yeah.
I know that even though we don't have an ABL leave category today, the chief still gives time off for, association activities. The change here obviously is now we're going to be having negotiations and things under the collective bargaining agreement that don't exist. So we're trying to strike a balance of, as we're entering into this foray of having a collective bargaining agreement, how much leave do we need there? And, just giving the chief some discretion, as you pointed out, is important, but notating that has to be reasonable. It's not just
Yeah.
going to be arbitrary.
Okay.
So I think that hopefully can strike that balance that we all kind of need to make sure y'all are getting what you're looking for, and the chief can maintain the ability to make sure he can, schedule operations and everything accordingly.
And I think most, like I said, I think this one we're really close on. I think the only minor change I had was just the number of delegates we have. So kind copied it from Denton, so our delegates are a little different. We get 4 for the TSAF and then 3 for the IFF, just based on size of membership. But that was the only that was the only big one. And then bear with me for a sec. Yeah. So the only other one I looked at was the top of section 2 with 24-hour increments. If there's a time where, training's only 8 hours or something in town, would it be, reasonable to come back to work after the training is done? You know what I'm saying? Like making a 24-hour increment.
Yeah, we'll talk to, we'll talk to the
Okay.
chief about that, but we'll get you some answers on that one. Yeah. Here, microphone.
Wise, thank you. I guess scheduling wise, on that scenario, if somebody is gonna be off to go to a 8-hour course, if you're scheduling that in advance, we just need to talk about, that would just work with a holdover from a prior shift, I guess, is the way you would cover that. Because you're not gonna backfill somebody for a whole 24 hours, then you'd have an overlap.
Right, yeah. That's fine if you want to give us 24 hours off when we only need 4. I'm trying to think
No,
like
I understand.
by having 24 kind of limits
Right.
everything.
The current practice now is that backfill model, so this is not uncommon, whether it's a departmental issued training.
Is it a holdover backfill as opposed to bringing somebody else in?
Well, so it would depend on the current daily staffing, but if that overtime had to be hired, it would be known in advance,
Okay.
and that would be hired as overtime. If
So
there
I think
were-
that was what the chief was trying to keep from having to do. If you got somebody that's gonna be out for 8, I gotta hire somebody else for a full 24.
No, we hire 8-hour.
Okay.
It would only be hired for the amount of times that we're
Okay.
gone. That's the current practice. So if a guy's out 10, we would hire 10,
Right.
not 24. So there would be no overlap, and it would actually be less expensive with Brian's suggestion.
Okay, mighty good. All right, we'll talk about that.
The only other thing I kind of wanted to address on that one was, again, section 2, that very first part. The political activity part, and this is kind of dicey one. I know there's SB 12 and all sorts of interesting things happening down in Austin. But I think it's important to note some of the activity we've done down in Austin that's benefited not just the city, but the department. We just passed, totally gonna mess up, House Bill 4644. That was the Texas Task Force bill. So instead of the city having to make an employee whole, the state has to make them whole. That was us. We went down there, testified on that bill, worked the Capitol to get that bill across the finish line. And then last session, SB 1413 was that roadway liability bill. Again, that was us as well. So I think we can be of use down there. But again, I don't necessarily know how you navigate that with some of these bills coming through the pipeline right now in special session. But I think we've done a good job down there on those 2 bills.
So let me ask you this, it's just a straight up question. Do you have a problem with a contract provision that means that your personnel need to use their own time to go to Austin to lobby on things that the city's opposed to, as opposed to what you just outlined?
Yeah.
Because those are scenarios to where the city and the association are on the same team.
Yeah, so something I was looking at was, if there was a provision that, if we're using ABL, if we're using ABL, it's not gonna be down there for political, but, there was a section in the original proposal we gave y'all about exchange time.
Right.
I'd feel comfortable with that if a guy wants to work for me, so I can go down there and testify on a bill. That's fine. We have members that are willing to work for us, so we can go do the work for the membership.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of going to be what my counter looked at was just updating the delegates, putting in something regarding exchange time, and then other than that,
I think that's a good idea. I want to explore that with the chief. I think
Okay.
that's got some potential right there.
okay.
And that's the kind of stuff I like to do at the table like this, is just be candid with each other.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, there's things that are going on down there where you and the chief and the cities, what do they call them?
Lobbyists?
Yeah, what's the nice word for lobbyist?
Advocating.
An advocate? No.
Yeah, there
Is there a nice word for a lobbyist? I don't know about that one.
I'm trying to remember what they always called them. You remember Shanna Igo, right? She's
Yeah.
retired now.
Yeah,
She had some kind of a word other than lobbyist. Anyway,
legislative director.
But the
Legislative
reality
director?
is, I spent my whole life, when I used to go to the legislature, which thankfully I don't have to do anymore,
Yeah,
Yep.
down there working together on stuff or down there butting heads with each other on stuff. The bottom line is just real simple. The city doesn't want to be given free public time off when you're down there trying to pass a bill we oppose.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So
I mean,
you guys go do it. You get to do it. We can't stop you from doing it. More power to you, but you got to do it on your own time.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And that's kind of what I was getting at with these other bills is like, I don't expect the city to pay for us to go down to Austin and oppose them on stuff. Like, that'd be absurd.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think we're far off on that one. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to
Good.
talk through it together, look at some options. I could send, like I said, I can send you a counter for it, but again, if it just depends on.
We'll talk about that some more,
Okay.
and then we'll decide what it looks like.
Okay.
I think that's fair. You have any feedback for us on promotions?
The only thing I had on that was just the thought process on April versus September. I mean, I'm not opposed to having a set date in place. Just
Janet, can you explain that?
I'll do my best.
It was explained to me, but I think she understands it better.
So I think, for us, it kind of, number one, we're trying to be consistent about when the list is going to expire and when we're going to have the new list. And then also keep in mind, I think from the chief's standpoint, he's thinking about, a good time to test when schools have started, people have their kids back in school. September seems to work well for that. I think it's also consistent with when we do other testing. And so it really was just, not much more than that, other than we just think it works a little bit better operationally. We agree, we're fine to agree to like a set time period, and then we tried to move the dates out accordingly, in the rest of that article.
so-
But, yeah, it was also thinking about when the list is gonna expire, because we didn't want to have
Yeah.
either too short or really long
Yeah.
on that promotional exam list. So we think September's good, because, we'll basically have 11 months.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, we're not, like I said, we're just curious thought process,
Yeah.
so I can go take it back to the membership. I mean, the intention behind it was
Mm-hmm.
just having some sort of set time in mind.
Which I think, but both sides agree that
Yes.
that's actually a good idea.
Yeah, and then the only other question I had was the sourceless posting. We had in there that there would be 10 sources. Any reason for taking 10 out?
My recollection is just, I don't know that we want to be so hamstrung to a particular number. We're more focused on the types and the quality versus the quantity.
Okay.
But,
Okay, I get what you're saying. So maybe it's 5 books with 100 questions. or-
Correct.
No more than 10. How's that?
Yeah, no more than 10. Can we do that?
well, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk
And
about that.
that's just, I think civil service kind of, it says somewhere between 100 and 150 questions.
Questions.
I think it's really worked well for us in the past. As far as I know, it's been 10 books, 100
But
questions.
it hasn't been officially 10 books. That's just been kind of the way it's turned
Yeah,
out.
yeah, how it's turned out. So, I mean,
So
I'd be good if,
what you're looking for is a realistic study
Yeah.
material set.
yeah,
So instead of, what you don't want to see is that all of a sudden it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
right. Yeah, that's the big concern for us. I think right now, if you want to take like a promotional exam, it's $500 or $600 in books, and they change editions. So we're talking every year. If we start adding 5-6 books to that, I mean, if you want to promote,
That may just solve the problem, not more than 10.
yeah.
So,
But that
Well,
was
let you
it.
know.
I mean, I think everything else is mostly okay. I mean, I think it's fine, good.
Yeah, you're not hamstrung.
Yeah. We'll review it real quick and just make sure the timeline is how I'm imagining it, but other than that, I think it's 99% good to go.
So let me tell you what we're looking at on our grievance arbitration article. I put some language in there. I've had a number of experiences in the last 40 years in the, contract grievance scenario where I've come to believe that there's something to be gained by using a hybrid process. And we're going to give you this article and have a discussion about it, but I wanted you to understand it a little bit. We'll send it to you when we get back up there, finish going over it with our team real quick. And the way it works is you start out and you go to mediation with a selected person. In my view, it's always better to pick somebody if you can, to be your decision maker as opposed to the, luck of the draw dynamic. Sometimes you're stuck with the luck of the draw dynamic. But if you go to have mediation with an individual and you sit down and you try to resolve the issue, I always think it's a good idea to do that first. I think it's probably in the city's best interest most of the time, and I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not it's in the association's best interest. I think their interests are aligned, but I'm not telling you how you ought to think about this. If you've gone to a mediator and you've tried to resolve the issue, I think that mediator is uniquely well-positioned to actually hear the evidence on the case, read the contract, and decide what the answer is if the parties can't settle the case. And it also saves money, because the mediator already has familiarity with the issues at that point, understands kind of the pros and cons, and can actually tell you, well, here's the things that I would like to have that I don't have in order to decide this. And so what happens is it just transitions from, we tried to settle this, we couldn't settle it, the mediator's now going to rule for one side or the other. And sets a hearing, you present evidence, testimony, or whatever as necessary, and the mediator, makes a ruling on that. You spend less time in a hearing, somebody's already been paid for the get up to speed side of the coin, and I think the outcome is more likely to be consistent with what the parties intended when they wrote the deal to begin with. So that's what you're going to see. I want you to think about it. I can't give you specific examples where that's worked because the context that put me in a position of believing that that's the best model are usually from other places. One example is years ago, we had hang on a second. We had a big flood in San Antonio and involved about nearly 30 houses over in the Dreamland area. And so instead of building a big new drainage project, the city decided it was going to acquire a bunch of those houses and remediate that area so that we didn't have all these houses in the floodplain. They had two choices. Either you got to get the water out of there faster and sooner and cut a deeper trench, or you got to get rid of the houses because the houses are in the wrong place. So the city went out to acquire these various houses, and we had a big mediation deal. And some of them we couldn't settle at mediation. And the mediator, I think it was John Specia, was the one that actually had the idea. If you can't settle this case, why don't you just let me decide it for you? Because we've already spent 2 days, and I know all this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to have to hire somebody else and bring them in here and present all this stuff so that they can make the decision. And we did, and it was a really good outcome. So I also think that you may or may not be familiar, Joe, with the grievance arbitration that they had with the police in Austin over their citizen monitor. You probably heard about it.
Yeah, I did.
But the city went to a grievance arbitration in that and had a terrible result for the city. And I think the arbitration outcome, had some legitimacy on some of the complaints that the APA had. but it was really a really bad outcome for the city of Austin. And I think it would have been a better deal if the parties had tried to mediate that and then had a mediator decide how that deal ought to look. So I've had the same conversation with the fire chief and with city management here, and we want y'all to think about whether or not this model would be good. Number one, it saves money. Number two, it's quicker and easier, and I think it's more likely to produce a result that's consistent with where the parties wanted to get to begin with, instead of spending money on a mediator, then having a hearing, and then it's, somebody loses and somebody wins.
Yeah, yeah, well,
When you talk about the mediator or picking a mediator that what does that mean? What does that look like, Lo?
Most of the places that I'm involved in this kind of work, we have people that we have worked with in multiple different capacities. I like somebody that has specific experience in public safety. Sometimes luck of the draw from AAA, you end up with somebody who's been most of their career doing stuff for, Delta Airlines or, some bread factory or whatever, oil field service people or whatever, and they've been doing those kind of labor negotiations. It's not the same thing as public safety. And, there are environments to where the relationships on the labor disputes are such that all you can do is just, strike the list. And if you strike the list, that doesn't mean this model don't work. You obviously, you have your resources on your side of the table to where here's my list, who's used this person. I've had 3 cases in front of so-and-so. I've never had a case in front of this person. What I would do if you and I were doing one of these is I'd say, I'd call you on the phone and say, I think these 3 people are the best people to actually hear this case. Are you willing to agree on any one of those? And if we can't agree, let's pull those 3 people out of the list, and then we'll strike those 3 people. I think we're more likely to get somebody that's the right choice to determine that dispute, doing it that way, than just striking the list. In my opinion, striking the list of 7 from the AAA usually results in the worst possible person to hear the case.
Well, like you said, it's the luck of the draw. And we'll use the FMCS example. With all the Doge cuts and the chaos that exists in that agency right now,
Probably not going to be there.
they brought him back in a lawsuit. I think the case was in Rhode Island. So they brought him back, but then there's been more that were offered another buyout.
Right.
So right now, we were down to 5 mediators in the country. Now I think it's about 50.
Right.
But there's stuff they're not doing. So former FMCS mediators have now set up shop and hung up a shingle.
Yep.
And are doing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
And
is that
that's an excellent scenario to where we pick one of those people and they're no longer with that agency, and we just agree that that's going to be our person. Because we know that they have the background, we know that they have the right fair and objective mindset. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. And you said you're going to give us some language on
Yes.
that? I'll wait for
We'll
that
add that this
before I
morning.
ask
we'll
more
take a look,
questions.
yeah.
Thanks, Lo.
Hopefully we don't ever
Thank you.
tell mediator.
Well, I think if you're at a grievance going to mediation, I think that means your labor management relationship is not where it should be, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Because if you have a good labor management relationship, you're able to handle stuff at the lowest level, and there's no grievances because you settled it at the lowest level.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, anything else before we break and go get ready for our next discussion?
One sec. I don't think anything yet. Like I said, I think once we get that overtime one figured out and how we make all that stuff work, I think all the other dominoes kind of fall into place after that.
All right, so when we come back, we're going to provide you, this Q&A, have a dialogue about the overtime scheduling, accounting, payroll function. We're also going to have discussion about the vacation slots.
I had a quick question. My notes from last time said that we were close to TAing the Labor Relations Committee article. Are we good on that?
So I have a, we had the discussion last time, and I think we were trying to figure out, like, if there is no, like, requirement to meet, like, I think like I explained last time, we have a
Right,
good.
okay, so we just need to propose some language on kind of, we can cancel them, we had the conversation about you could cancel the meeting if
Yeah,
there was
so-
nothing to meet about.
So I wrote a counter that
Okay.
I can give you
Okay.
guys, and it's basically along the lines of, yeah, we have to submit agenda items 5 days before. If there is no agenda items,
Okay.
we can mutually cancel it. The only thing I was trying to avoid was, like, if, let's say, we have something to talk about, and it just
Even if the chief doesn't.
yeah,
or-
without
right,
a
sure.
meeting thing,
Yes,
like
understood.
the next
Okay.
chief could say,
Yep.
go away, I don't want to talk to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't had that happen with the current chief, so
Understood.
again, it's hard to forecast what the next one looks like.
Okay,
But I have a counter.
so
I
we're
can,
close on that one.
yeah, I have a
Okay.
counter I can send y'all.
That'd be great.
All it does is have that in
Okay.
there.
Why don't you send that, and
Okay.
I think our perspective is slightly different, but we're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that is, the association has a right to meet with the chief on labor management concerns.
Hmm.
On the other hand, association doesn't have the right to say, chief, you have to meet with us this month, or you
Right.
have to meet with us now on these things.
Right.
So we're trying to achieve the same objective. Our response to that is probably going to be, no less than, 8 times a year, the parties will meet, based on an agenda or something like that.
Oh, I don't even want it
So,
that many times. I was thinking like
think we had a-
quarterly at the
I think
most.
we had a
well,
Quarterly.
that language is fine too. No less than quarterly, and here's the process for setting up the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what was missing was just the ability to cancel it. If everybody agrees there's no need to meet, we don't want to just say we have to
Yeah.
meet once a quarter for the sake of having nothing to say.
that-
Even if
That's
there's a need to
pointless.
meet, but it's a bad time to meet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's basically what the counter is quarterly. If there's nothing to talk about, we can cancel.
Yeah.
No reason to meet, just for no reason. So I'll send that to y'all, and then yeah, once we get that 1 or 2 articles figured
Great.
out, we can truck along. I think on the rest. So
All right. We'll give you a report on where we are.
yeah, we still good in that room over there. I didn't see a sign or anything, but
It should be good.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate y'all's patience. We've sent you a few things, and we can talk about those in a little while. First, we wanted to give you some responses and information on the budget process and the thinking behind the staffing issue. That's kind of the core piece. We thought we would shift directly to that, and so I'll turn it over to the city manager to give you that feedback. And then we'll continue this process of having these dialogue sessions and trying to knock some of these articles out.
Thank you, Lowell. Good morning. It's great to be with you. Appreciate the process that we've been going through over the last several weeks and several months. Really appreciate the feedback and the thoughts, and I'm very appreciative and appreciate the good progress we've made so far. You had a question relative to the budget and how we are managing moving forward. As you know, we have a lot of different needs across the city. You referenced, understandably so, the police staffing plan that the police chief provided over to the council at our May budget retreat. There are a number of positions that they are seeking. They have proposed a 5-year plan. We have not finalized a 5-year plan. Our goal is to do everything that we can to ensure that they are taken care of. Our goal is also to ensure that we can do everything we can to make sure that our fire departments and our fire services are taken care of as well. We've made a commitment over the last number of years, ever since I've been here, to continue to move towards 4-person staffing. And we know and understand that that is your primary focus relative to staffing needs and what you're looking for. So we're looking to make that commitment and to complete that in a 5-year period. And we have presented to you what those numbers would look like over those 5 years. Each and every year, what we do is we look at the dollars that we have coming into our general fund. And the first priorities that we have are always going to be ensuring that we set the dollars aside for all of our staffing needs, specifically for our STEP programs, for our civil service, our STEP programs for general government, our market for civil service, and our COLA for general government as well. Each year, for this next fiscal year, that's about $10 million. So all things being equal, holding all service levels exactly where they're at across the city, in order for us to pay for the first priority that we have, which is always going to be taking care of our employees, we need to have an additional $10 million of new revenue each and every year. From there, we can then pay for whatever other increases that we have, and we're always going to have increases. Inflation has the cost increase coming across from just basic operations of material, supplies, fuel, et cetera. And then we prioritize what we can do with service expansions. What we're looking at doing here with the Fire Association is under contract, committing ourselves to completing that process within 5 years, while still trying to balance all the other first personnel needs that we have at a minimum of $10 million, just keeping what we got. That's obviously going to increase as we add more personnel. That $10 million will go up. So if we don't have that new revenue coming in, we then have to make priority decisions. How are we going to pay for that? Our goal is to always take care of our employees first. If we don't have that, we're going to have to make decisions. And what I don't know, gentlemen, right now, to be perfectly frank, I don't know how we're going to pay for that, to be perfectly frank. Each and every year, when we get our property taxes, what our estimates are, we know and understand that there are certain rules that the state has put upon us that are capping us at our revenues. Fortunately, for the last several years, we have, where our tax rate has ended up, we've had some capacity to be able to go above that 3.5% cap without having to go out to the voters for approval. That capacity is beginning to run out. We can only keep that for 3 years. After that, we are then going to be held at that 3.5% cap. We don't see that for next year, which is good news for us, but that capacity that was built up 3 years ago is going to fall off the accounting sheets, and we won't have that. So we are anticipating the possibility and potentially the likelihood that in fiscal year 27, we may automatically have a tax rate deduction based upon that 3.5% cap. So we're just going to have to see how all that plays out. My goal is to come to council each and every year, asking them what their goals are for property tax increases. We give them our estimates. We have the existing valuation that, again, is capped. We're still growing. Last year, we had $1.2 billion worth of new permit valuation come through. That doesn't necessarily equate all the way over to valuation that comes through the books through the appraisal district. But if for some reason we have growth that slows down or stops, or we hit this cap, or sales tax slows down, we're all still waiting for this recession that fortunately has not hit. Those are all the things that we're trying to balance. But I just want to let you know right up front, just $10 million a year of new revenue is needed just to take care of the basics for all of our personnel. So to make a commitment over a 5-year period to get to that 4-person staffing, I believe is a very strong commitment. I believe it's one that is doable. Again, we don't know how we're going to pay for that, but we can focus on that. We can focus on police, and we can focus on all the needs of the cities as best possible. But with this contract, that means this would have to be the priority, and we understand that.
And I don't know if you've seen the previous meetings or this morning, but while we have you down here, really appreciate the work we've been able to accomplish the last couple of years. I mean, we have come in great strides, even on the salary side. You know, we thought we were going to have a longer phase in. You guys, I don't know how they figured it out on upstairs, but they've done a lot faster. So we really do appreciate that. And we are trying to figure out how to make it work. I mean, first thing I guess I can think of is with valuations, possibly changing and having to commit to potential staffing, would there be, I guess, any sort of opening to maybe we, instead of a 5-year contract, we shorten it, but it doesn't, we may not get 4 on everything at that point in time, and we can reevaluate towards the end of the contract and figure out how the budget's doing. I think, if I'm understanding correctly, the concern is committing to something long-term without knowing how finances are going to look. Would a possibly better option be somewhat shorter contract that doesn't necessarily say there will be 4 on everything by the end of the contract, but it gives us the ability to come back and maybe look in 2 or 3 years, depending on how the market was doing, if we can complete the process or not?
Understood. Good questions. I believe you were at, Brian, the budget retreat that we had in May. One of the things that we brought up at that budget retreat is we said, council, you have some capacity now. So you have the ability to raise the property tax rates right now over and above what that 3.5% would be, because we've built up that capacity without having to go to a vote of the residents, because that capacity is there. Again, that's going to fall off. I did not get a sense from council that they are willing to do that. In the 11 years I've been here, understandably so, this council and most councils are going to be reticent to raising property taxes. It just is not popular, so we try and live within those property taxes. In fact, one council member, it was Councilmember Lamorges, he's no longer on the council, but I believe he did accurately reflect the general sentiment of the council that if there is going to be a potential of a property tax increase, whether SB 2 requires us to do it or not, they would still want to go out to the residents and ask, do you want this? And this is what those dollars would be used for. So even if we do have the capacity, I still think that the council would want to take that out to the voters as SB 2 requires, whether the council be required to do that or not. To your question on whether we could have a different term on the contract, the proposal that we have set out in front of you with the numbers of the 4-person staffing as we had set out, if that term is shortened below that 5 years, whatever would have been done in any one of those years that would then not have been included, would not be included, would then not be part of that process. I would prefer to stick with that contract, because if we're going to commit to that, and that's what I think we're telling you, is, again, gentlemen, I don't know how I'm going to pay for that, but I'm willing to commit to you guys that we will make 4-person staffing work over a 5-year period, and then we'll be done. And that's a strong, strong commitment. And I think we can do that. Again, financially, how we'll do that, we'll figure that out. But if we go shorter, we would stop it at that, and then we would then look to have, in the next round of negotiations, a continuation and finalization of that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that was really the only question I had regarding that, was just trying to get, like I kind of said the last meeting or the meetings before that, we all want the same, have the same goal and objective, trying to do it reasonably within the budget, but I'm also trying to come up with a way where the membership approves it, and 5 years is kind of getting up there on contract length, so I'm trying to get creative where maybe we don't get all 4, like you said, and it's, we drop a year off, we don't get all 4, and we reevaluate. I'm just trying to get creative here on a way we can get it to pass our members, pass council, without breaking the bank.
Understood.
So,
And I appreciate that, Brian, I really do. And again, I agree, we've had a great working relationship. We've always tried to figure out a way to get it done. If the association is only looking for a 4-year or a 3-year, whatever those numbers would be, that we would have implemented in years 4 or years 5 would just fall off, and then we would look to have that as part of the next negotiation.
okay.
But I
Yeah.
think you would have support from myself. I believe I could talk with council and let them know the importance of, again, getting this 4-person staffing and making the commitment, a contractual commitment to be able to do that. And I understand some of the thoughts from your side on, do we go 4, do we go 5? Because I know that is a long-term commitment, but this is a significant significant investment and commitment that the city would be making, and I appreciate Lowell's thoughts earlier when he said if the police association were the ones sitting across the table, we'd be telling them the same thing. If it's a contract, we'd want to be understanding and careful. There's aspirational, there's things that we know we can do, there's things that we don't know we can do, but we're willing to commit, and then there's things that we just don't know, but we know that we just can't do. What I'm saying is, we don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but we're willing to make a commitment to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge, and I would,
Because a contract is never the same as a plan.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, because, again, like you said, at the budget retreat, made it very clear that, like, it's not set in stone, like, we're gonna do everything we can to try and make it work. I know this sets everything in stone, so trying to do our best to make it work, and obviously impossible to predict the future,
Sure.
so.
Well, that's why I told y'all earlier that I was proud of the city's actions, and obviously those are the leadership, that Chris has brought to the table on these critical issues that, the risk that your members take, if you say, let's do a shorter term contract and try to see how fast what we can get done in 3 years or 4 years. The thing I would caution about is that you're then putting off the next negotiation cycle to a period that is predictably probably going to be tighter purse strings than exist today. So that's what everybody on this side of the table believes. One of the reasons we have this proposal is, even though it's not as fast as you would like to see this happen, it's a commitment that the city can make today. And what we might be able to do in 3 years might be better, but we don't think it's going to be better.
We'll, I appreciate, questions being answered, kind of explain it for us. We'll probably have a little bit of discussion on that. Again, for us, just like you guys, this is a new process for us, and obviously our members, we've been in the training, we've seen how this stuff works, and, we're comfortable with certain levels of it. Obviously, membership hasn't been through what we have, and I'm sure there's some concern there about long-term, we don't know what we don't know, committing to something long-term, but I think possibly we can get there. I think if it's entirety of the contract, I think is really what makes it work for the members, so, yeah, we'll have to have probably a little discussion on that and figure out if maybe shorter is the way to go without adding all the people we need to. We'll just have to discuss that amongst ourselves, but appreciate the explanation and the thought process and stuff. Helps us come to a decision.
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. So we'll shift to the issues that you had. The Chief wants to give you his thoughts and feedback about what we believe is the right solution on the overtime and scheduling of personnel under the articles that we're looking at here. And then after we talk about that issue, we'll shift on to the vacation slots availability question. That's also a part of what we've got to get worked out.
Okay, you want to talk about vacations first?
Let's start with the overtime issue and then do vacations.
I'm sorry, overtime related to what?
The sick hours,
Yeah.
not counting as hours.
Okay.
Productive time.
And the Kelly Day.
Okay, so yeah, it's just a matter of working with telestaff on sick leave usage. That's kind of what we're addressing here. And so if sick leave usage is not considered work hours, we'd have to work with telestaff. We got a 27-day work cycle, so they'd have to come up with software and it can be done, where it tracks your hours, and once you hit the 204-hour mark, then you would get the overtime. So you may work 2 shifts in a row at the front side of a 27-day cycle, but you wouldn't get paid overtime till you hit the 204-hour mark towards the back of the cycle, if that makes sense. It's no different than somebody working a 40-hour week, and they get a lot of their 40 hours on the front end, and then the back end, they hit the 40-hour mark and they go above it. So it's telestaff can do that. It's just a matter of getting the program set up to track that for our personnel.
I think it wasn't, I don't think tracking it was a concern as much as like if somebody called in sick, I guess you want to touch on this one? You were the guy that brought it up.
Yeah. If during the pay cycle, somebody calls in sick, they're Group 9 Kelly Day, we can obviously account for that. If they're Group 1 Kelly Day and they call in sick, Group 9 on that day, how would that work implementation-wise?
Because they'd be on two different paychecks. It's still a 27-day work cycle, but it'd be on two different paychecks.
Correct. But you're actually tracking it over a 27-day cycle. You may get paid twice in that cycle. So if you don't hit the 204 hours in the first cycle and you do the second, your overtime will come into play there. Where you're used to, let's just say, getting paid for sick leave hours, and you call in sick, but then you turn right around and work an overtime shift, you'll get paid during that same pay cycle, even though you hadn't hit the 204 hours yet. The change in the mindset would be you wouldn't get paid overtime till you hit 204 hours, which is a 27-day work cycle or 2 pay periods.
Sometimes it can even hit 3, depending on how it lays out.
But it may hit 3 pay cycles, but it's always a 27-day cycle.
Right.
So once you hit that, when that 27-day cycle starts, then that software would track how many hours you actually worked. And once you hit 204, anything past that would be either time off or overtime. So the Kelly Day usage is not paid time. It's just time that if you've acquired the 204 you get. Now, the challenge would be in that software, because we got it spread out over 30 days, the Kelly days, not the sick leave. The sick leave wouldn't be the problem of tracking, it'd be the Kelly days that we use.
Yeah, it'd be the Kelly Day, so they would end up losing the Kelly Day if they called in sick during that cycle.
We just have to see how the software can track that Kelly Day usage. Like I said, the sick leave usage wouldn't be a problem.
No, I mean,
because
that's
just
easy to
gonna
track.
bump you back, yeah.
Right.
And,
But
you know,
if
if you called in sick at the front of a cycle, more than likely you won't get a Kelly Day. The hard part's gonna be at the back end of the cycle. If you got a Kelly Day and you use a sick day.
Right.
That part's gonna be the challenging part.
If you already utilized your Kelly Day for that cycle,
I think
then you would lose it.
Right.
I think the big question here is that policy was copied and pasted from city policy. Was there an issue with the city policy that we're making a change to it? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, we just copy and pasted it.
Yeah, I think the issue is the use of sick leave being paid time.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know of many departments around here that function in that capacity.
And you'll remember my original explanation on that was as a part of figuring out how we're going to be able to make the most rapid progress that we can to achieve the staffing element. This was just one of the places that we can save money, not waste money, optimize our ability to put all of our dollars on the staffing enhancement piece of the puzzle. And we think it's a fair program. We think people are going to get paid fairly that way. There's the downside that you're talking about, depending on where certain things fall. Somebody loses a Kelly Day. And our perspective on that is that's a small price to pay in order to achieve what we want to do as soon as we can on the staffing side of this. So it's just part of the balance of trying to, strike an affordable capability to make a commitment to do this. And so that's the context.
I think the other point that needed to be brought up is we're just trying to get in line with the federal law of FLSA on how we do our sick leave usage as compensable time is not part of FLSA.
Correct.
Yeah. And so we're trying to get in line with that federal law for our employees.
And all the other, city departments.
Even our own prevention department, sick leave is not compensable time in our own department.
Chief, just so I'm tracking, the overtime part seems pretty cut and dry. You work 204, after that, you can get overtime. But say that Group 1 guy has used that Kelly Day, that was the 12 hours and then 12 vacation or holiday. Generally, it's our holiday. and then he calls in sick later in the cycle, how do you navigate that? Do you bill him more vacation or holiday?
Well, there's different ways to accomplish what you're talking about. It may be we have that employee come in and work to get up to their 204 hours. They may have gotten a Kelly day in Group 1, called in sick, but now they're going to fall about 36 minus 12 hours, 24 hours short of hitting the 204 hours that they're obligated to work for the city. So they may be required to come in and work another shift before the end of that 27-day cycle.
Okay.
So there's different ways to get there, but that's one of them to answer your question.
Yeah. And another concern that we had, and we spoke with you guys about before, is that we're having tremendous issues with our paychecks now. And so it certainly is a concern on our side of the table, adding an extra element when we're struggling with the ones that we currently have.
I think, that's two different problems, though. Our first problem is telestaff and tracking. That's what we turn into HR. Munis is the system that's giving you problem on your paychecks, not telestaff. So
What is the
telestaff
problem?
is just a tracking thing.
What is the problem on the paychecks?
Oh, there's all sorts of problems, but they're getting them worked out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right. I'll get schooled on that. You don't have to do it.
I think while I understand FLSA and getting that in line, FLSA is the federal minimum of where we are. And we have always typically calculated sick leave for the reason of scheduling. With this change, it's a pretty fundamental change to how we schedule things across the department, whether it's vacation or training or whatever. With the ability to lose that overtime, that Kelly time, that's a big revamp of pretty much everything we're doing. And that one little, striking out those two words is a huge development to our department.
And our perspective on that, we recognize that. We recognize every time we have a situation like this where your members have something that they're used to, they feel like that's an entitlement that they're used to. The ask here is we want to achieve this staffing objective while at the same time we maintain the same 80% pay growth, competitive model, and compensation. Most of those comparative cities, as I understand it, I haven't personally verified this. Normally I would look at it myself, but I haven't. But my understanding is most of them are not paying productive time for sick leave. The very comparators that we're looking at to figure out what our pay ought to be. And so that's why we felt like that was a legitimate adjustment to make so we can achieve the staffing objective.
I think that's true. I think exactly what you said, they're not paying that time. They don't utilize the Kelly model either. And when you do that, you save the city a lot of money on overtime, the way that we operate it right now. Because if you start taking away that time, it becomes productive time, and calculating for the overtime, you have to pay us for those 12 hours instead of giving us the Kelly time that we use in lieu of that right now. So we don't have anybody, we would have to fill those hours with additional personnel, not to mention the 10 city holidays that we get that we pair with that Kelly time to give us a full shift off. So you're talking about 10 days that has to be scheduled in order that we use it, plus 2 days, which would be another additional 24 hours of vacation. You're talking about the vacation schedule and slots available for people to utilize their time would increase quite a bit. It's a can of worms that once you start opening it, it's going to keep coming.
And I agree with what you're saying, Daniel. It is a can of worms. But like's been said here, I can't think of one other city. There may be one that gives you time work for sick leave.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Will there be some challenges with working this out through the software? Maybe a little bit. I don't think there'll be a whole lot. I think what maybe we can both agree on is sick leave usage has gone up over the years. And I can go back and I can pull those numbers and tell real quick. But sick leave usage has gone up, and therefore we are still paying out a lot of overtime even for the sick leave usage. So I don't think you'll see a big difference And matter of fact, there may be a decrease in the obligation of paying out by not giving sick leave as time worked.
Yeah, and I think that's true everywhere. I think it's a generational change. you know,
True,
In
yeah.
terms of attendance at work and sick leave and so forth and so on. You want to talk about the vacation slot question? That was the other thing. I think these kind
Yeah.
of things are,
Yeah.
tied at the head or tied at the tail, one way or the other. They all have the same thing, part of the scheduling process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So a little explanation on the vacation slots, and I know y'all had a battalion chief go back and put together a PowerPoint and gave that to us. Administration went back and looked at those numbers as well. We actually put in actual numbers of where we were. I can give you averages, and then I'll give you an example of a particular shift when I get through. So we went back and gave added up all the vacation hours available to utilize for your vacation schedule, and on average, your employees are having about 202 hours in their bank. Some more, some less, but the median average is about 202. So when you do your 3 rounds of scheduling each August, on average, there are 70 slots available at the end of that 3-cycle tour when you go through and pick your vacation days. So we've had on average 70. Now, it's a little bit different on each shift, and I'll give you a particular shift. This past fiscal year for C shift, as you know, we have 122 work days, and you got 7 slots available. So that's about 854 slots available. So after everybody went through and chose their vacation time and time off, you still had 121 slots available. Now, where were they available at? There's the question, okay? January, February, I think we can all agree on that. January, February, and September were the top 3 where you had 20 or more slots available during that time period. Where were they least available? Christmas, June, July, and August. They're tapped out. So are there slots available? Yes, sir, there are. And as you know, we just increased and went to 7 slots for the full year. We did have 6, and then part of the year we had 7. First time around, it went away. This past year, we increased them all to 7 because we were adding Central Station and Medicaid. And what I'm asking for y'all is, as we go forward, when it's necessary, everybody can't be off in June, July, and August. When it's necessary, we'll increase the slots. I'm not saying, just like when you say you wanted 9, or the PowerPoint I think was 8.5, you don't want to limit yourself to that if we need 10. What if we need 10 once we add all these people and you've locked in on a 5-year contract? I think we need to go through and review this on an annual basis and see what's available to the members. And if you've got that many slots available, there's really no reason to open up more slots. And that's the numbers that we went back. Those are actual numbers.
So, I get what you're saying completely. Again, this is going to be, I think it's going to be totally contingent on the overtime, sick leave, productive use, because now if people aren't taking their Kelly days, that's more hours of holiday and vacation that they're accruing. How do we get them to burn that? Like I said before, opening up changing those 2 words really opens up a can of worms where almost everything we do is going to have to change. Vacation slots are going to have to go up.
First of all, I want
not
to
following
make
you
clear
there.
we're not doing away with Kelly days.
No,
You only get a Kelly day if you reach your hours. We're not doing away with Kelly days.
Yeah.
And therefore, the whole purpose of a Kelly day is reduce your hours so you don't get paid overtime. But if you don't reach the number of hours you need, that's where we're coming in, is your sick time is being counted towards work time, and therefore we're paying you overtime even though there's sick leave usage during that cycle, and 204 hours was not reached.
But if in a 27-day cycle somebody doesn't call in, or they do call in sick, where do they put the 12 hours of holiday or vacation? Where does that go?
Well, they'll still have scheduled time off for holidays, vacations. So they may have a half a shift off, is what I'm saying. If they don't hit 204 hours, they may have a half a shift off. And we may pair two of them up for a full shift. One takes the first half, one takes the second half. And we've done that before with new recruits, when they can't utilize their vacation and stuff.
So we would potentially be having people outside of their 24/48s forced to work to make up the 204 hours, to get to 204 hours. I'm trying to figure out how
You
we,
could, yeah. That's what I'm throwing out there. You could, because you're obligated to get that pay. You're obligated to work 204 hours.
okay,
And
so,
if you're calling in sick and that doesn't count, you're not hitting 204 hours.
so if they just say, okay, we'll burn the sick leave time, I'm still trying to figure out where, like, vacation gets burned right now via Kelly days. How do we burn that accumulation if, like, let's say somebody, again, calls in sick, they just say, whatever, burn the sick leave.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a, I don't know, I think it's how we're structured is gonna make this challenging.
Well, and remember, we can still open up slots as well. I'm not saying we're limited to 7. We can still open up slots. If it looks like we're getting reduced in amount of slots and there's been a high usage of sick leave and they're accumulating more vacation time, we may have to open up more slots so they can burn that time.
And I think that our perspective is, it's, there's a balance that's involved there, you know? Some people are gonna have to take time off during the parts of the year that they don't wanna take the time off. You know, that's inherent in every system. And
Yeah.
the question is, strike an appropriate balance so that as many as possible can be off when they prefer to be off, as many as possible can be off when, you know, that's quality family time or other kinds of time that the employee wants to have. But at the same time, the taxpayers are not paying for people not being at work. And, you know, we want to stop the sick leave overutilization trend to the extent that we can. We want people to be off on sick leave when they don't have any business being at work. We want people to be at work, covering the work, you know, when they can.
So if sick leave goes down under the new plan, then you're gonna end up paying more in overtime, right? Because we have, just looking at 27 days is how many?
204 hours.
Okay, so it's exactly 204.
If sick leave use goes down, then we'll pay less overtime.
Okay.
So when you're talking about sick leave, you're off a shift that you're burning 24 hours of your sick leave, right? This only, the 204 hour only relates to overtime, getting paid.
That's correct.
The 16 hours over, that's what we're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, when the overtime is triggered within that 27-day cycle. 27-day work period is what the actual terminology is.
And it's because you have a Kelly Day
Right.
type system
Yeah.
here.
How does that work, Chief, with the 365-day work period?
The 365-day work period is for dispatch only. So what dispatch would do is they got a 2,080-hour work cycle for 365 days.
Because they're unique.
Yeah, they're unique. They got approved through the Department of Labor in both Dallas and Fort Worth. They're pulling the paperwork for us, but that only applies to dispatch. And so they go through and count their shifts, which is 3 work days, 24 hours on, 72 hours off, and they add those up through the year. And the total hours worked, they reduce it down to 2,080, and the extra time is Kelly days. But if they call in sick, it starts taking off that, and so they may lose Kelly days, time off, because they're hitting back down towards the 2,080 hours. So if you call in sick enough times and your max is going to be 2,080, then you won't be getting any Kelly days.
Okay, that's understandable. I'm just gonna use myself as an example here. So I'm in dispatch, have an unfortunate neck thing, I miss a month. Come back to work, we're short-staffed, somebody else is out, you need me to work overtime. So I'm working straight time for a month?
I'm saying that could be an option. I'm not saying it is the end result. I'm saying that could be an option if we were short-staffed and the city was spending a lot of money on overtime. You need to hit your 2,080 hours. That's what you're obligated to hit before you use Kelly days.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, what I will say is,
And the sick leave still results, like Joe was saying, the sick leave still results in the employee being paid if they're out on sick leave. They just don't get to the overtime threshold.
And by using sick leave, they will have the 20/80, but 24 hours of that would be sick, so that would be deducted off the end of
Of the overtime
that's
threshold.
the year
That's
cycle
right.
that you have. Interesting.
I guess just out of curiosity, I mean, when did we start noticing sick leave go up? Is there like a rough timeline? Do we have any numbers or anything like that?
no, but I can go back and figure that, but it pretty much relates to the amount of our overtime that's been going up and up and up.
Okay.
I mean, if you just pull the daily work schedule, you'll see that we have numerous people off every day on sick leave. You know, we've only got basically 115 people per shift to pull from. 14 of those are on Kelly Day. Another 7 is on vacation. So we got very little room for sick leave and training to take place. And then you throw in workers' comp and long-term sick leave, we're getting into overtime really quick. And then when somebody just wants off because they want off, and you guys know what happens as much as I do. I've been in this business 40 years. I know what happens. So they're going to call in sick. And a lot of these younger generations, they feel like they earn that time, so they should be able to spend it how they want to. Where the older generation kept it for when they needed sick leave. And so that's what we're dealing with here on trying to get back to FLSA and where sick is not considered work time. And you're exactly right. That only plays into when we hit the overtime number, whether it's 2,080, 204, or 40. You know, once you cross that threshold, then you get paid your overtime.
And you're right, it is generational, Chief. I've seen it. You know, you've got people that utilize sick leave, and you have people that don't. And it's the people in the middle that will occasionally use it when they are sick. But, you know, I've spoken to these younger people, and, hey, what are you gonna do, you know? We used to have guys retire with 3,200 hours of sick leave. And I just say guys, I don't mean just men, just fire people. You don't see that anymore. You don't. So it's a challenge everywhere.
So I want to thank y'all for sorting through this with us. We're trying to be straightforward and just, you know, totally transparent about how we're sorting through this, trying to make sure that we can afford it. We appreciate you listening to it, thinking about it. We sent you the change in the Labor Management Committee, which I think complies with what we talked about earlier, so if you'll take a look at that, see if we've gotten that one to the TA status. We revised the promotions article to adjust. Chief pointed out that we have policies in addition to the 10 sources, but no more than 10 sources, and, you know, in addition to policy study for the exam. And so if y'all are okay with the change in the time of the year, we think that's probably a good article. It's pretty close to getting ready to go. And then, what was the other one?
ABL.
The ABL article that we talked about. I believe we made the changes that we had discussed here, so hopefully that one's close as well. We also sent you the contract grievance procedure article. I had explained that earlier, and I'll just let y'all take a look at it and see if you have any questions. So I think those are the things that we currently have on the table, and we're open to anything else that you want us to be studying on over our lunch break. So,
Can I jump in here? I wanted to explain further. I know y'all talked about it on the entrance exam, the month, why September versus April. You may or you may not know, but we give the entrance exam every September. And that gives us basically 4 months to go through our process of hiring these applicants. And then we have back-to-back schools throughout the year, January, April, and August. And so we try to get that all on the front end. If we can get our promotions set at the same time that we're doing our entrance exam, that gives us a better idea of how many people we need to hire going into those schools for the fire academy. That's why it's September, to make that happen.
For clarity on the source material, I at least believe our intent, currently we use those policies, rules and regs, procedures. They're part of that 10. Am I reading this that it's 10 plus those?
That's what we intended, that it's no more than 10 in addition to policies and procedures.
Okay. Brian, was that your intent?
Yeah, I think it was just no more than 10. I mean, whatever they pick to put on there is up to them. I mean, just no more than 10, but
Including the policies and procedures. I don't know if
So
that's
would-
a sticking point for you,
So
Chief,
would
but
policies and procedures be one of the 10?
yeah, the way you have it written is
be
now there'd
11.
be 13 books. Because we have emergency operating guidelines, general procedures, and rules and regulations. So I would just, if it was written where it just says the list shall include no more than 10 sources with ISBN numbers if applicable, that would cover, because then they can pick, like, we're going to put the Irving books as part of that 10. Like, that would clean up the language like that, because the way it's written now, it could be 13 or 14.
And I'm good with that, reducing it down to 7 with the number and
Okay, so no more than
But do-
7 in addition to policies and procedures?
Now, do you want it saying 7 because the driver test has the IFT hydraulics manual?
well, we'll just
Is it-
have to reduce another book. I think we should stay consistent across the
Well,
board.
That's what I was saying, if you put 10 max,
Well, if you'll drop the USB number out and the book number, we can just say maximum of 10 sources.
Yeah, to include
Yeah.
the policies and procedures, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
yeah, I think we're all on the same page. It's just getting the language there.
Why don't y'all write it the way you think it ought to read, and we'll look at it, see if it works. It
Okay.
sounds like it will to me.
and I think the only reason ISBN number was in there was I think we've run into this in the past, if there wasn't an ISBN on the source list, there was 2 different variations of a book, and that changes how test is done. So I may come up with a way where if there is an ISBN, like, need to provide it. If there's not, like our Irving stuff, don't need to put, you don't need to put anything for that.
We'll just lead into the statement with a combination, maximum combination of 10.
Yeah, that'll work. So other than that, man, I think it's squared away. I appreciate the explanation. We're just trying to figure out why September makes sense. So,
And then on the ABL article, I'll just mention, I talked to the chief about the 24-hour shift thing. If the rest of that article's ready to go, then we can solve that problem about a full 24 off.
the only other thing I was looking at was the exchange time. We brought that up.
As I understand, that's already covered by policy. Trade time.
Well,
Said somebody working for you, I thought you said.
correct. So if basically, so the way this is written right now is obviously I cannot go advocate for stuff against the city on city dollar, right?
Right.
Right, but I guess what I was getting at was those subs, if it's exchange time, won't count towards rolling time or anything like that. Yeah, so it was just gonna be basically,
Policy was that, and I'm trying, was it on
It-
the new telestaff, I know, they track
Yeah.
subs, and that's what you're talking about.
yeah, it was the sub time policy, I guess.
And we
Yeah,
we don't have a
sub-calls.
problem putting something in there that makes it clear that that's authorized.
Yeah, okay, and that was the only change I had, and then the other one, I'm sorry, was, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph in section 2. Our meetings only last an hour tops, but because they happen at 8 a.m., I wonder if like 2 hours is just gonna cut it close, like get to the union hall, we're done at 9 a.m. and then get to the station. I mean, I'm 2.5 or 3 hours, so we're not running late, but That was the only other change I was looking at. And honestly, I usually just have, I mean, we try and find somebody to hold over for us anyway, so we're not, we're able to attend. But,
What meetings is that?
so for it says, leave with pay shall be limited to 1 meeting per month, which is all we do, not to exceed 2 hours per meeting. So our meetings are only an hour,
Gotcha.
roughly, but
Membership meeting.
they start at 8 a.m. So if they run till 9:30, getting back to the station, we would, and that's in our bylaws, so we would have to do a constitutional bylaws change to move the meeting forward, which I don't even think we could, because guys get off at 7 a.m., so.
So you're proposing 2.5 hours per meeting? What's the
Sure, I mean, you want to do
counter
2.5
proposal that
or
y'all are
That would-
3,
asking?
like,
I'm just trying to understand what the
Yeah, that
ask
would
is.
give us an hour to conduct business, which is pretty standard unless it's something out of bounds.
Sure, absolutely.
And then a
That's easy
half
to
hour to
do.
get back.
That's easy, right, chief? No problem with that.
But, yeah, I'll email you the counters. It's almost identical to what you have.
All right.
And I think I got the number of people right based on what you said earlier. But
Yeah.
if those are wrong, just feel free to
No,
correct them, Brian.
you guys got that? Yes, correct. Yeah, I think it'll work. I'll email it to you here momentarily.
All right, so I guess that takes us to the lunchtime. Anything else before we break?
On the grievance article though?
Yes.
Step 5.
I got it.
Talking about mediation arbitration, and jointly request a list of 7 arbitrators from the American Arbitration Association or federal mediation. Maybe we can use the same language we used, where it says, from an approved panel, and then just give,
On
give-
A, that's under 4A.
it's under 4, it's under, yeah, A4.
Yep, you're exactly right.
Maybe just put approved panel
It should be the
because
same thing.
FMCS is,
We'll make that adjustment.
I spoke to a mediator from there, and he said that
Right.
everything's got to get approved by some 22-year-old Doge guy. Has to approve their work day. How's that?
Yep.
Maybe we can put something like that.
Okay.
You have any experience with this kind of deal, doing a mediator that then turns into an arbitrator?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
What do you think about it? You willing to tell me?
I know that there's mediators and then there's arbitrators. I didn't know that there was a combination. I'd never.
Yeah.
It's, I mean,
Appreciate
Let me
y'all
chew on
thinking-
it, but-
Appreciate y'all thinking about it.
but,
So, sir, can you answer how limited that pool is to find a duly certified?
No, that, they don't even need to be certified. I mean, people are certified in arbitration, and most of the people that do arbitration also do mediation.
Okay,
Most of them do. And in terms of how I pick people for doing this kind of stuff, like Mr. Tejas and I were just talking about, it doesn't have anything to do with their certification. It has to do with what we find out about what their history and experience is in their approach they bring to the table in the way they solve the dispute.
yes, sir, okay. In my ignorance, I just didn't know for it to be binding if they had to have an
That is
official
not, that is not
credential.
required at all.
Okay.
And it's not ignorance at all. Nobody that asks questions like you do is ignorant.
true. Have you used this already?
I have not used this under a labor agreement grievance. I have been involved in really successful outcomes elsewhere, and like I told you, the APA grievance experience, I think that this would have solved that in a way that would have been beneficial to both sides. Because basically what happened is that they had a train wreck, and then it took them 3 years to fix it. In that kind of arbitration outcome, nobody won.
No. Okay. Thank you for the explanation, Lo.
Certainly. All right. We will see y'all again in a little over an hour. Check in with you and see where you are and what you need from us.
Okay?
Get together sometime between 1:15 and 1:30.
Okay, that sounds good.
My apologies. All right. We good to go? We are. Okay. Spent a lot of time discussing the overtime article in there, trying to figure out how to make it work. I think the ultimate crux of where we're at is the Kelly Day portion for us. So I think, let me pull it up here. I think the overtime article as it's written, I think will work for us, but we need to put something regarding Kelly days in our work hours or work period article, whatever that may be. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, if we want something to pass our membership, I mean, Kelly Day is without a doubt probably one of the most important things to them. I mean, if we don't have Kelly Days written in this thing, they're going to vote everything down. That's just nature of the beast. But I think.
Are you going to put something together and try to capture that for us?
So I think this is where maybe we need to put our heads together and try and figure out a way to make it work. Like I said, I think we can leave it out of the overtime hours one. I think we're all in agreement that if call in sick, you know, it is what it is. You're not going to get overtime. I think that's fair. But putting, like I said, putting something into the work hours where it captures that Kelly Day, every 9 shifts, I think is how we currently do it. Every 9th shift. Using whatever it may be. I mean, again, I think that's where we need to put our heads together and try and figure out what hours you utilize for that, you know, holiday, vacation, however we can make it work in the system. Like I said, we're really definitely want to get a contract done. I think we're heading in the right direction.
That's very fair. I appreciate that feedback, and we will start trying to figure that out and come back and tell you what our ideas.
Okay. Yep.
I'm not sure how to write it. One of the things that we talked about is basically it would be an exchange where you would say that sick leave would be utilized as time worked for purpose of calculating Kelly days, but left out on time worked for purpose of calculating overtime. That makes sense. It's kind of boiled down. I don't know how to phrase it or put it in what article, but that's the thought process I think we were looking at.
I think I'm reading your mind on this, and so we will work on it.
Okay.
Obviously beating a dead horse here, but so we discussed how many things were predicated on that overtime. And we've kind of gotten past that, and we completely understand, like Brian said, that if you don't work your time, then you shouldn't get time and a half on additional shifts in that cycle. We get that. The Kelly Day, so our vacations are scheduled around those. Those are designated days that are set a year out. And so to come by at a future date and revoke that would just kind of explode all these policies. Yes, sir. And so whether they have to use different leave banks to make that work, you know, that's where we need to get to. But those things are like a set day on the calendar, and that's what our membership counts on. Vacations are scheduled around that, family events, et cetera.
I mean, that's kind of the gist of it on that one. Like I said, think it's acceptable. We just gotta figure out that Kelly Day part.
Yeah, I think we're not totally in opposition to that either. I mean, we want to work out something, so we'll talk, see what
bet.
we can come up with.
You bet.
That one's a big one.
You have some other items we can check off? Any little things or big things that we're about done with?
Oh yeah, I was gonna send you the ABL one real quick.
Okay.
So all I did was I got what you had, just the language at exchange time, and then I added just some gender neutral language, I guess, for contract purposes. Not sure that matters or not, but let me email that to you real quick. Hang on one sec, let me send this to you real quick. And then I think the other one on there was I saw your guys' labor management one. I think it's we're basically on the same page. Let me send you the language that we changed, which again was the quarterly, but we can cancel if needed, if that works, or let me.
That's what so you're saying you just have more edits to that section I sent? Because I put that in there with the cancellation. I reinserted the original language you all had in your original ABL proposal, and then we just added a sentence about the ability to cancel
Never mind, you're
the
right.
meeting if we had no items to discuss, or to reschedule the meeting if it was necessary.
No, you're right. I only looked at like the lines underlined all
That's
that,
okay.
so I didn't see that quarterly was added back in there.
Yeah, I put it back in. That entire
Okay.
section was from your original proposal, but
Yeah, I mean,
feel free to double check it.
Yeah, that one looks fine.
Okay.
Here's just sent you the ABL one.
I see what you're saying.
I think that's what,
That second section and that second paragraph in section 1 of the Labor Management Committee.
just the first line.
Yeah, we can take that out. Yes, we can take that out.
See, sometimes the committee process works well.
There we go. Got it figured out.
Okay,
Most of the time.
that's fine.
I'm trying to find an easy one here. Try and knock out.
Okay, so we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think the promotions one was squared away also, except,
Oh, we didn't need to fix the source. Did you have additional language on the source list posting, or do you want me to do that? I know we talked about it before we broke, but just making
I
it.
mean, I really think the only thing that needs to be deleted is section 5 at the very end, and department policies and procedures. It just says no more than 10 sources.
We were just gonna say including departmental policies and procedures, right?
That's
Well,
right.
'cause if it says including, okay, no more than 10 including,
Correct.
okay. And this may be a Chief Conley question you want to ask him, but if you put department policies and procedures, does that mean he can't put in like the IFD hydraulics manual, the rules and regulations? You know what I'm saying? Do we specify too much where it takes his ability away from putting certain Irving stuff in there?
What,
Oh,
can you explain to me the
okay.
hydraulics manual, where that comes from? Is
It's just another book we have for our driver promotional exam. So,
But is it promulgated by the department, that manual?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I mean, we can go back and look at, we're gonna have a definition for departmental policies in the definition section of the contract. I would imagine we could just make sure we're capturing anything broadly that is something promulgated by the
Yeah,
department that
sure.
affects,
That
do
works.
we think that's fine?
Yep.
Okay.
Think that'll work.
In the way that y'all are using the terms department policies and procedures, does it include that hydraulics manual or not? That's what I thought
No,
the
I mean,
answer
it's not a policy or procedure,
Right.
it's just a book the department put together for, engine operations like pumping, fire engines, that kind of stuff,
But it's
so.
kind of a credential that you have to have. You have to have that study or whatever in order to even test for it.
That was the intent of just capping it at 10,
Yeah.
to leave that leeway when you start, when you
So-
start
so
saying
that
to
one-
include.
Right, that one would not count, as I understand what you're saying. The 10 would have to include the policies and procedures, but would it also include that?
Yes, sir. And that's why Brian left the language open
So.
to just
so
max of 10.
We got our 10, and the 10, you take away policies and procedures, is that one? So that we got 9 left?
Yeah, so we have general procedures,
Right,
rules and regulations,
okay.
emergency operating guidelines.
Okay,
So that's
three.
three sources.
So, okay, so.
Hydraulics would be
So you
4.
take 3 out of the 10, you got 7 left, right?
Yes,
So now they're
And
saying
so,
hydraulics.
right, so for every test other than the driver test, you would have 7 sources other than those 3.
Right.
yes, sir.
For the driver test, you would only have 6, because the hydraulics manual is one of the others,
If the chief
Correct.
or the committee chose to include that.
which they always have, right? Okay. Now we're on the same page about what it works like.
We'll clarify with the
Yeah,
chief.
we'll
but
make sure that works, I think it does.
We'll find a way to make that language work.
All it does is tell you what pressure you need to pump at for however many goals you've laid out.
No, we understand, it's just, how big is the elephant you gotta eat, right?
Yeah, that would,
Yeah.
And the deal on ISBN numbers, it says where applicable. And I think, obviously there's not one for the Irving stuff. So, was there an issue with that?
No,
Okay.
No. No, and I think it said if available, and then we made it if applicable. I don't know that it really matters.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
Then I can tell you that it's several tests back, we had trouble with several of the books that just had different versions, but they weren't editions. Like, it wasn't a new edition.
Okay.
And it was more leadership books. They weren't like textbooks. So stuff we were reading, well, one of them had, added documentation for dealing with new generations, and the other one didn't have it. So where did that come from? If it had the ISBN number.
yeah, well, I think,
know.
I think it's important, and it's important for both sides, because the association doesn't want to deal with a bunch of promotional
No.
appeals, and the city didn't want to screw with that. And so we need to make sure that when we post the list, everybody has the same stuff, and that there's no confusion about what they're supposed to read.
Yes, sir.
So
100%.
we'll make sure we're talking to HR about this as well as the chief, and make sure everybody understands that. Because that's the last thing I want to see, is that, some of your folks have one version, some of them have another version, and the test comes out of one, and then they're going to appeal that question, right? That wasn't in my book.
Other than the source list post. Other than the source list posting in that article, is everything else good?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it all looks good.
So we are working on the disciplinary matrix article and the investigations and discipline article. We were just doing that when we got y'all's note to come back here. Anything else that you want to provide with us in terms of feedback now? Or you want us to go back and try to get these finished and get these to you?
I mean, we can go over sick leave a little bit. I mean, we received
Okay.
your guys' counter on that one.
Okay?
I think what we're looking at on section 5 for documentation purposes, if I'm reading it correctly, like item F, basically, I mean, that kind of eliminates that entire section, doesn't it? Like, what's the point of spelling out when you're gonna turn in a note, if it can just be requested at any time. I mean, was that,
The F you're reading is about, it says all, the F you're looking at, Brian, that says all employees who utilize sick leave.
oh, my lettering is messed up.
Okay,
The very last one in
got
section
you.
5, that's what I should have said instead of letters.
yes, okay. So on I, just adding the discretion of the supervisor to request
Right,
some
that-
sort of documentation.
Right, doesn't that, I mean, the way I'm reading that, that basically, like, takes away the entire section 5, because if we're spelling out when you gotta bring in a note, but they can ask for one anytime, and what's the,
What? I think the concern there is if there's something that doesn't neatly fit within one of these articulated categories that we've captured above, we want to make it clear that it's always the supervisor has the discretion to ask for it if they believe that, you know, it's warranted to request a doctor's note.
if it doesn't fit into any of them, okay, I mean,
Yeah, I
that's,
mean, I think that's the goal, is to make sure there's
Yeah.
an additional, like, it's like a catch-all at the end.
Yeah.
This is the circumstance, but then also there's a catch-all, so that if somehow it doesn't neatly fit, I mean, we've tried to think about as many situations as we can come up with, but I think that was the concern.
I think if you do that, then you do make all that other null and void. And I'm not trying to be argumentative about it, but it will get interpreted multiple ways by multiple supervisors. And the standard for one person is gonna be, I need a note. The standard for another is gonna be, well, it fits up there. So that's
Okay.
something to be considered, I think.
Yeah, let us think on that one a little bit.
'Cause it seems like you've captured pretty much every scenario.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, those sections in there regarding documentation, all that stuff, I mean, that's not make or break stuff for the contracts. I mean, we're really trying to, city policy says one thing, like I mentioned when I was laying it out, like, if we get doctor's notes every single shift, the city is surely paying some sort of premium on the back end, trying to figure out a way where maybe some costs can be saved on there. But, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, that article's not, that section in particular is not the end of the world. I mean, if we want to keep operating how we're operating, I mean, it is what it is.
And I appreciate that, because I'm generally gonna be an advocate for not doing unnecessary paperwork. The reality is, most of your station captains and your supervisory people, they know what they need to get, and they know who's actually out on sick leave for a good reason. And I'd rather have more discretion instead of more, you know, do it this way and do it every time for everybody. Like you said, you know, if we're sending people to the doctor that don't need to go to the doctor, for us to make sure that they actually don't need to be at work that day, and we can save some money, I want to figure out whether or not we can make that work. I do know, normally I would be kind of attached to this provision that we're talking about. I don't want every supervisor to be able to yank people around. You know, you got somebody that's a, you know, hard head, and you got some other people that are, you know, not paying attention. On the other hand, if I've got documentation that doesn't answer my question, then I ought to be able to say, I need to get this information from your doctor. But I need to tell you what that information is and why I don't already have it from the things that you've already provided me. So that, anyway, that's just our thinking process.
Okay.
So we'll go through that.
Yeah, that, and then also, I just wanted to clarify, you know, when we looked at our red lines on this particular article, we were also looking at existing city policy, which currently says it can be as required by other city or department policies and procedures, or by the employee supervisor. So we were making sure we weren't, you know,
Okay.
missing something that's an existing policy. I hear the concern, and let us talk through it, and we'll see if there's some way we can better wordsmith
Yeah,
it,
that-
maybe.
That works, yeah, appreciate that one, and I mean, we discussed this briefly. I mean, we haven't brought it up yet in this, in any articles, but I guess kind of just gauging your thoughts or opinions on the sick leave one in particular. Doing, if sick leave is a concern, we're spending a bunch of money on sick leave. What about incentivizing people that don't use sick leave? We've seen it done in other municipalities where it's a sick leave buyback over X number of hours. You can sell back up to X amount. And you're selling it back at your current rate, you know, as opposed to what a future rate's gonna be down the road, like an annual kind of, you can't sell back a ton of leave, but like a little bit, maybe as an incentive for people, just trying to get creative here, not burning sick leave throughout the year. Some sort of motivation maybe for people to hang on to sick leave hours so they get some sort of refund at the end of the year. You're not paying overtime. You're paying out sick leave at that year's rate versus future potential higher rates. Just a thought. I mean,
So we
It's a
do
good-
have a
it's
sick
good
leave
thought.
incentive.
It's a good thought, and, you know, I think that's one of the things that both sides should always consider on this stuff. Generally, in my experience, thank you, appreciate the reminder. Both sides need to think about that. Incentives to make sure that people are not using sick leave unless they're sick and shouldn't be at work are a good idea, and the department supports that, and chief supports that. Usually, sick leave buyback options end up putting money in the pockets that are already complying and don't have a lot of impact on the people that are not complying. And so I'm not telling you that because our answer is no. I'm just telling you that that's one of the realities from our side. How much bang for the buck are we getting if we do that kind of a program? But I think we're on the right track here about not over-requiring documentation for absences and focusing on what we need to decide whether or not the leave was appropriately utilized. So it's a good discussion, and I want to get it right, so.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I agree. I mean, we hear the concern, and obviously we do sick leave incentives for other employees at the city, so that's why I was looking at the policy. So we'll visit about that.
We did one in El Paso, if you want to take a look at that.
Okay.
We will take a look at that. One of the things that I don't know if anybody has ever done is a look-back sick leave incentive. In other words, if in fiscal year 25-26, you know, the city's sick leave utilization, you know, was down by X percent, then the employees get this benefit. So in other words, we actually tie it to, did we accomplish, you know, limiting sick leave utilization in the prior fiscal cycle, and we actually save some money, then the employees get part of the savings. I don't know if that's too complicated. You know, that's the kind of thing I'd try to support.
We can even look at maybe a pilot program kind of thing, see
Yeah,
if it works.
and sunset it at the end of this
Yeah,
contract.
something like that.
Yeah.
Just to see, like you mentioned, what impact would it have?
Right, right. Y'all know what that means, sunset, right? See, you went to what a good training program.
The best.
Who,
Hard knocks.
You taught it?
Life taught it.
So Lou, what you're saying is that we'll tie the sick leave would be a correlation with overtime?
No, no, what I was
So
saying.
overtime, because a lot of overtime is driven by sick leave to fill
Absolutely.
the positions. So you think there'd be a correlation if we go out there and say, oh,
Could be.
yeah,
You could use either or. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because if you're reducing sick leave, you're reducing overtime.
absolutely.
So you could index either, you know, less sick leave utilization or a reduction in overtime cost for the prior year as the basis for, that's where my money comes from for the sick leave incentive.
Got it.
I would think, just looking at, you know, this is anecdotal, I don't have the data to back it up, but I would say that quite a bit of our sick leave quite a bit of our overtime is based off hiring, training, paid parental leave, the different leaves. I think sick leave probably is in the top 3, but I don't think it's the number 1 driver. I don't know, but I think we could look into that.
That's a very pertinent observation. I'm gonna see what data we've got about that shows what those, I'm not sure they're accounted for in the payroll system. In other words, can I go run a report that tells me what the answer is?
Yes, sir. Every day when somebody's hired on overtime, it's coded for what they were hired for.
And like you said, Logan, there's people that utilize sick leave and those that don't. And then this kind of addresses the masses.
Right.
That use sick leave or may use sick leave incidentally here and there.
Yep.
And it incentivizes it to.
Oh, we were talking
save.
earlier, and I said, you know, if I'm involved in a discipline case on sick leave utilization, if I'm the arbitrator, I'm gonna ask the supervisor, have you ever had to tell this person to go home because they were sick? And I'm gonna ask the employee, have you ever been told to go home when you were sick? Because that person is not ever gonna be abusing their sick leave.
Or did you come to work and get everybody sick?
Right.
Now
right.
everybody's
You don't
sick.
want that to happen either.
I think the only other thing we can use some information on, or maybe a little bit of education help on, is the funding obligations article.
Yes.
Just a quick, Section A makes sense. I've seen that. That's pretty sure it's legally required language. Could use a walkthrough on the rest of that article. Okay, and I mean, I'll just tell you right now, I think the only thing that like blatantly sticks out to me on this one is Section C, that the entire contract would be null and void. I don't see why like promotions would have to be null and void, or like the civil service process, like a quorum being 3. I think cleaning that up in a way where stuff that requires funding, like, the 80th percentile, like the staffing phase-in, that kind of stuff makes sense, but not the entire contract doesn't quite make sense to me.
I've seen this language in meet and confer agreements, but never in the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah. It is in one of the Austin CBAs. Yeah, but understand your point, so.
And certainly understand Brian's point, is that the funding language is in there because of the shortfall of funds, and therefore it should only be linked to things that are a funding problem.
Right, yeah, and that was the big one for me, but other than that, I think just a basic understanding of that subsection B would help us a little bit.
We'll go work on these other articles and get you some answers and maybe a revision on sick leave and talk about funding obligations when we get back.
Anything else that you need to shoot over or anything?
Have you guys had a chance to look at that, the cert pay, certification pay, that admin pay stuff I sent you?
We've had a little bit of internal conversation about it. I didn't know if you all were gonna give us an actual proposal on a counter or
So,
based on what we sent. I know.
Yeah, I have one, but
Okay.
I wanted to understand, like, again, I don't want to send a counter if we're just on totally different, trying to find something that works for us here, common ground.
Okay.
Um,
We'll add that to the list. We'll go over that and be prepared to have some dialogue before we have another proposal.
And I think I shot you an email. They're changing the certification requirements for the Swiftwater rescue technicians to require ropes as a prerequisite. That literally came out like the day after our last meeting, so.
Right, but that's not a certification that's
Yeah, it'd be
available today yet, right?
TCFP.
Yeah, it
Yes.
would be a TCFP certification.
And when will that be in place?
We could probably call
Okay.
the TCFP
Okay.
commissioner. We happen to know him. Yeah, figure out, when they're looking at that, but they're looking at now adding Ropes is a requirement to it. So what used to just be like a little class, or not a little class, but what used to be like a Swiftwater class, now you have to go take 40-something hours of rope operations and then Swiftwater. And then that's more continuing education you have to keep up with throughout the year. Wish we got the information before the last meeting. I mean, they literally posted it the day after our last meeting. So, but just something to look into and think about. I mean, like I said, I've got a counter for that one in place, but
Okay.
trying to figure out what works with y'all.
And I
We'll
know
get
some of
that.
the cities you had sent us, our HR department was going back and looking at because some of the verbiage on some of the pays that they used didn't totally align, I
My
think,
bad.
with. No, it's not
8 hour
you. I think it's when we call them and ask for their benchmarking. I think that was where some of the disconnect
Yeah,
was.
8 hour staff assignment, I think is going to be what most of them call administrative pay.
Okay.
Or sworn 8 hour personnel
Okay.
is typically what they call so if you ask them for admin pay, if they don't have it spelled out as admin pay, they're not going to have it. But I could send you. I thought I included the titles on the one I sent you, but I'll get them for you.
Yeah, that's good. We did have some limited discussion on the certain issues.
We'll get that info on the Swiftwater. Okay.
That will call them.
Yeah, we'll try and get you that info on the Swiftwater added requirements.
I know that the chief had articulated in one of our prior meetings, just the frequency of that response and that capability here, and the value in the department as compared to some other places. So that's one of the other considerations too.
We have, just for example, we've got at least 4 guys down in Kerrville right now on a boat
Right.
operating water rescues. So, I mean, we do use it. We deploy people all around the state for it.
Okay.
And that's all part of the Texas Task Force, right? Okay. So we'll explore that a little bit further.
Thank you.
Going to check back in about an hour or so, Lowell, about 2:30?
I don't think it'll take that long. We'll let you know something in 30, 40 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
I got your ABL
Let's
edits
just keep
and I
it fresh,
forwarded.
though.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Just had a question on the ABL one. I think we're 2 hordes away from the ABL one being good to go. So just kind of looking for some clarification on that. But let me sift through these real quick if you want.
So on Article 20, the Labor Management Committee, I just took out that first line from the second paragraph of Section 1 that had the meeting kind of more amorphous about mutually agreed upon, since we're setting forth the quarterly down in Section 3.
Want to check that one? pen. Thank you. I have a pen, I just,
Down here.
thank you. Can I look through it or not? Or,
Take a look.
I mean, I can give it to them. I just don't know if you want to look through it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two more off the list. Good.
Okay.
All right, so, good, we have a TA here on, labor management relations and promotions, right?
Yes, sir.
And so then that takes us to, the ABL article. Fill us in on what your remaining issue is there. I felt like we had a meeting of the minds that work on, the legislative side in opposition
Yep.
to the city's interest is something we wouldn't want to be doing on city time, but I'll turn it over to you. You can explain to me what you want to do here.
Yeah, so section 3 on the exchange time, the way that the counter we got from the city was written was you just added those two words for time. So I think that was kind of the idea when I was laying it out was I've had members ask, you know, can I cover for you so you can go conduct business of the association, right? So guys are willing to work on my behalf. When it adds exchange time for time, makes it sound like I again have to work back for those guys when they're trying to voluntarily work for me. So I think that's where
I think the only thing we were trying to prevent is paying people to sub in, which we think is a problem. Maybe a problem on the IRS side, and that's what we were trying to avoid. I don't think we were trying to avoid what you're talking about.
yeah, I think well, I'm not going to go into the cast sub thing, but yeah, I mean, that kind of just, again, the time for time kind of defeats the purpose of it, of the exchange time.
So what you were proposing is that you or other members of your board or whatever are gonna go to Austin or wherever doing that kind of stuff. Somebody would just take your shift
Yeah, well,
on a
yeah,
volunteer basis.
yeah, and not even Austin. I've had some guys, like,
Right.
let's say we're doing an election or whatever it may
Sure.
be, and
Yeah.
some guys don't want to do the election stuff, but they want to help out a different way. It's like, okay, if you work for me while I'm supposed to be at work, I'll go do that stuff that, you know, maybe you're not comfortable with doing.
We'll confirm on that. I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
Okay. I mean, other than that, everything else on there, I think, is
Alright.
squared away, so.
All right, before we move into the rest of this, did y'all have any, feedback, ideas or other response on the contract grievance procedure provision we'd given you?
I mean, we're gonna have to spend some time looking at that
Okay.
one, I think.
Okay.
Run it by some of these guys that have done it, you know, a little longer, just make sure it's all kosher, but
That's fine, and we don't have any problem with that. I will just mention this, you know, I've been pretty straightforward that this is kind of a new approach, that a lot of people, maybe don't have a framework to evaluate. We specifically wrote this to where in every dispute that turns into a grievance, that both parties have to agree before it goes through that model, okay? So it's not like you're signing off on something today and you don't know how it's gonna work and you're stuck with it for 5 years. And I just wanted that to be clear, because a grievance comes up, and at that point, you can use the mediation arbitration hybrid if both parties agree on that grievance to use at that time. Okay, so as I see it, frankly, I'm not sure the city would have been willing to put it in there unless they have the opportunity to decide whether or not we're both on the same page. So in my mind, this is just giving us that extra option. Otherwise, it's just a conventional arbitration of contract grievance provision.
Yeah, yeah, and looking at it, it's still 70-80% roughly of what it was before.
That's right.
Just haven't had a lot of time to sift through this one, been working on the other ones.
Right.
Go to the top. Don't ask him about what does that mean.
Okay, I think on our side, we're looking for some clarification on section 2, step 3. That, so you're asking? Are you gonna ask him? I don't know. What's that? He had a question about this.
That last line in step 3?
Yes.
Where it says in the blue, city manager, if nothing, that means it's denied?
Correct.
That would just be moving it to step
Just
4, or
goes
is
to the
that?
next step.
Okay, so it's basically like a pocket veto kind of,
Well, it's actually just I didn't say yes, so it must be no.
okay. All right.
Yeah,
That
and
makes-
if you want to clarify that, shall be deemed denied, and the grievance shall proceed to step 4. If you'll put that there, that's what's intended.
I mean,
Okay.
that's.
I just wanted to make sure, I thought that was correct, but I
Yep.
just want to make sure.
In step 4, I mean, I read it as.
Good question.
Step 6? Oh,
Yes.
sorry, step 6. H, cost of the impartial arbitrator shall be borne by the losing party.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any heartburn with changing that to shall be borne, the cost of the arbitration shall be borne by both parties? We split the cost of the arbitration, if it goes that far.
I think we probably do have a problem with having an arbitration that we win and we have to split the cost. We might be willing to consider letting the arbitrator allocate the cost of the arbitration. Yeah, so let's think about that.
Okay.
We will let you know and appreciate that question.
Yeah, like I said, I think this one we just need to dive into it a little more, as a team. And again, been working on some of the other articles, haven't had a ton of time to chat about this one.
It's fine. So we've sent sick leave too?
I haven't sent it, but I have a printout.
Oh, okay, that's right, we had the copies, yeah, let's hand that out.
Thank you.
So you made some good points on this article, and appreciate the back and forth discussion about this. We continued that discussion on our side, and kind of sorted through this, and this is where we came out, which we think makes sense. We discovered, that we actually didn't have a model that fit into the 365-day dispatcher work period, and that nobody knows what their vacation accrual is, and just because it's such a weird deal.
Yes, it is.
But we talked about, you made a good point that we don't want to be over-documenting normal, regular sick leave and incurring costs in doing that. So we went back and sorted through the number of absences that it ought to take to trigger this. Obviously, you started with, and we tend to start with, what the existing city policy is. And so we think these two tweaks here in A and in B that you see are an improvement over that process. We had a concern about people being able to be gone for a full work week, you know, and not have to provide any documentation of sick
Yeah.
leave. So we've changed that to 3 or more consecutive work days. And then in the catch-all that really brought this discussion to the head on number F, we've changed that to say that the discretion of the supervisor, so long as the supervisor provides a written explanation to the employee setting forth the reasons why the additional sick leave documentation is being requested. And that's kind of what you asked for, but I think it makes really good sense, because if there's a pattern, you know,
Yeah.
and this is the 3rd year in a row you took the week off before deer season, you know, or this is the 5th time that you've taken sick leave off in conjunction with your vacation that was scheduled ahead of time or whatever, those are legitimate reasons, instead of just the supervisor can do whatever they want to.
Yeah, let me take a look. Yeah, the only, I guess the question I have is, what is the definition of a workday? Because in the original one I proposed, it changed, currently definition of a workday is 12 hours.
Okay?
So in the initial sick leave I proposed, it was changing the definition for the purposes of this article from making a workday 12 hours to making it 24 hours. That got nixed in the initial counter.
Okay?
But, I mean, as it's written right now, if a workday is still 12 hours, it's actually less than what is already currently in the policy.
Correct.
It just has to do with the definition of the workday.
And that's a
So-
good point. Let us revisit this and make sure that it's correctly written so that it will apply to 24-hour employees and it'll apply to 8-hour employees, and your dispatch is on what, 10s, 12s? What are they on?
24s.
Oh, 24s, okay.
So I don't know if you still have the original sick leave proposal I sent you.
Right,
There
we'll
were
take a
some
look.
definitions in there for workday. So, like I said, that got nixed.
You
I
bet.
think one of the first ones, but I think that would clear up.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we want to make sure that's clear.
Was the intent there to be 3 24-hour consecutive? Just so that we're, as we process
The
it.
40-hour work week, I think it was intended to be 3 8-hour days.
No,
Yes,
he's
sir.
talking about A.
On the 27 on A,
And that's correct. That was intended to be where it says 3 or more consecutive work days was 24s.
okay. And then 5 within a
Right.
consecutive.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, so we have sent you investigations and discipline. We understand this will take some time and review on your side. I think a lot of it is going to be self-explanatory. There's just some cleanup on the definitions that I think make perfect sense. I wanted to give you a response to some of the substantive changes that we're proposing here. We have deleted on here, and I think this was from your original proposal, about access to the initial materials in the investigation. We're generally not in favor of an investigative process that requires the investigator to disclose their investigative work product to the firefighter before obtaining the firefighter's statement. And that doesn't mean that we're opposed to the firefighter being able to have that information and clarify any issues that come up or whatever. And we have the provision down here that allows the firefighter to review report or other statement recorded or written by the firefighter, so that anything that, you know, the duty report or the materials on the computer system and so forth and so on, things that the firefighter authored ahead of time, those are entirely legitimate.
So,
I'm sorry.
so I guess the first point you made about being able to ask questions or answer questions before any sort of like complaint or something is filed, I think that's where we've maybe run into some issues in the past, is we don't actually know what's being looked into, don't know what questions we're supposed to answer, what questions we're not supposed to answer. I think we've seen in some of the disciplinary hearings and stuff in the past, they've gone a lot smoother and a lot more effectively if administration or the investigator has come with, this is what we're looking into. we're gonna talk about it, and then they can make a determination at that point, or continue looking if it sticks or not. But I think leaving it open, we end up going down a path of maybe we don't know what we're looking for. We're just kind of searching to see if there's something there.
Well, that's in A, and we're not proposing to change that.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood your first comment you made,
No,
so,
no, 'cause
okay.
and A still stays in here. Firefighter, subject of administrative investigation, provided with a copy of the complaint. In the event it doesn't contain all the allegations, not less than 72 hours before, must inform the
Okay.
firefighter of the additional allegations.
Okay, I misunderstood the first comment you
No
made
problem.
then, so.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, we struck out the B part because when a firefighter is called in to give a statement, we're not in favor of giving the firefighter everything the investigator has so that they can tailor whatever their truth is
Okay.
to the investigative world.
Okay, I gotcha.
That doesn't mean that the firefighter in this process won't have a full opportunity to respond to what the information is before discipline's ultimately imposed, because that's the fair part of this.
Okay,
So before the chief gets to say, I'm gonna look at, your statement, and you're the subject of the investigation. So I'm gonna look at theirs, I'm gonna look at yours, and I'm gonna look at the recordings, and I'm gonna look at the paperwork. Before you get to that point and the chief makes his mind up, you're gonna be able to answer all of those sources of information so that there's nothing left out.
okay,
So, and I'll just tell you that, because I've been doing this probably a whole lot more on the law enforcement investigation side than on the firefighter side. But investigative methodology, whether or not people go to the FBI school or these other special schools on doing internal affairs investigations, the game plan for the investigation is for the investigator to know as much as they can before they start asking the questions to the firefighters. And it's counterproductive to give all that information to the subject of the investigation before they ask any questions. I think it's self-explanatory on the top of the next page there, about allowed to review the information and so forth. That's in the same context of what I've just explained. Under this process, the firefighter gets to respond to any of the allegations, in the process before the chief makes a decision. There's the audio taping provision there for the protection of both parties, which I don't think is really an issue. And we've just tried to simplify the issue on association representation, where we have a number of strikeouts there under Section 6. We'd like to hear back from you about why those things are necessary. I think the representation, complies with what's necessary under the constitutional due process requirements and so forth. The B part down there talks about either using an association member or an attorney. And we struck out the Section 7 on violation of firefighter rights. I may have to go get me a glass of water. Thank you very much, Alana. And I think that just flows under the Chapter 143 provisions for ultimately the commission or the arbitrator making a decision on discipline on the merits. We have added to the version right in the context of the written statement there. We have a provision in there about notice to the firefighter under the statute. Of course, written personal service is required on a firefighter. Sometimes we have people that are hard to find, hard to get. Sometimes they may be dodging the service or whatever, so we just have an alternate service provision in there. And the time to investigate the charges, we have 180 days, which is the statutory provision. It says in here, nothing in this agreement modifies the other provisions in 036H, I guess it is, related to acts as a felony, Class A and B misdemeanor, so that if you have those criminal proceedings, you have the statutory provisions. I don't think you're really proposing to change those, so we just made that clear. Under suspensions, we've put in here alternate discipline and appeals. As you know, I'm sure, under the statute, there's a limitation that the chief can either give you 15 days or fire you. And so we think that it's actually in the best interest of the department and the individual employees that there is a broader range of potential discipline. The objective, of course, is to find out what is the truth about the allegation, and then is this a individual that ought to continue to be with the department, after some course correction takes place, and some learning, and that's the whole point of the alternative disposition and appeal. We've talked conceptually before about the suspension not appealed.
So, question on that one, just for our understanding. The very first line, firefighter may forfeit vacation holiday time equal to 1.5 times the length of their suspension.
Right.
What's the thought process on not doing
Thank you.
1-to-1?
Yeah, the thought process behind that is, if all you do is give up leave, have you really been disciplined at all? Is there actually any punishment,
Isn't losing your
inflicted?
leave punishment?
Yeah. And so I think the perspective on our side is this makes sure that we're trying to get the firefighters' attention. We think it's a fair balance. And so we don't have a suspension or appeal. And firefighters can appeal a suspension of 60 hours or less, or 40 hours or less, only to the Civil Service Commission. So it's kind of it's a forfeit leave model at 1.5, or go to the commission for a higher level of discipline, or at the higher level of discipline, you can go to independent hearing examiner under the statute. We think, I'm sorry.
So A to me sounds like a 2-for-1 kind of deal. Like, not only do you waive your right to appeal, but you also lose 1.5 times. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I get what you guys are saying. Like, I mean, but that's time that guys aren't gonna be able to take on vacation, or they may lose that, somewhere else. I mean, I think, again, just trying to understand the thought process behind, like, waiving right to appeal and getting the 1.5. So,
I think the chief feels pretty strongly that just forfeiting a vacation day is not really even much of a slap on the wrist. The point is, this is real discipline. We want people to learn from it. It's just about enforcing the rules.
yeah, and I don't think I would mind the 1.5 if it didn't come with the contingency that you had to waive your right to appeal. I feel like we're getting a 2-for-1 deal on this thing.
Okay?
But yeah, I'm gonna have to, like I said, kind of review this thing in its entirety and figure it out. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the big concern for me on that one. I think everything else makes sense on the surface of looking at it. We're gonna have to figure that one out.
Okay? The extending disciplinary deadline by agreement, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think that'd be very controversial. And then the cost of appeal here is half of the cost of the hearing examiner's fee, expenses, and court reporter, and then costs that are directly incurred by either of the participants in there, then they fill those in. It has an employee of the department required to backfill if they're scheduled to be on duty during the time of their testimony. So that's just the actual direct costs of the hearing process. I think under your model, those would be things that the association would be picking up out of, the litigation fund or whatever, the way y'all have that work. So we would like you to study that, and it's coupled, of course, with the disciplinary matrix provision. The objective here is within 4 months that our Labor Management Relations Committee is going to get to work with the chief. And if the chief adopts the matrix that was recommended by a majority of the committee, then that matrix then becomes the classification standard for the appeal timeframes that are in the article that goes with it.
I mean, yeah, I think the matrix, again, I'll look through this later, but I mean, we're on the same page with the matrix was the idea, those common infractions. It is what it is, you know, commit an offense, this
Yep.
is the flow path, so
Yep.
we'll look at that one a little bit.
I believe that's actually going to work very well with this group. I think there's a lot of, you know, commonality, you know, the mindset of the chief and the chief's command staff. The, the work hours provision that we have, that we just amended addresses the Kelly Day question in section 5. Employees who do not work more than 204 hours in a 27-day work period or 2,080 hours in a 365-day work period shall still take a Kelly Day during the appropriate work period, but will be required to use accrued vacation or holiday leave balances to satisfy the 204 or 2,080 hour requirement during the work period, or be called back to work to satisfy the required hours. And so utilization of leave balances and/or coming back to work are the options there, but this preserves the Kelly Day schedule so that we don't have a change in the fact that there's going to be a predictable scheduled Kelly Day, just like the current practice in the department, without causing all those other issues about scheduling a leave and so forth and so on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll look at this one a little more. I know when we initially proposed it, we had discussed doing the shift duty investigators, and that was part of us trying to figure out a way to make that work. So we'll have something on that one.
But now that's, although that's related to this, that's a separate
It's a
scenario, right?
separate section, but it's
Yeah.
still the same article. Just, I guess, for clarification on the Kelly days, on section 5. So the way it's spelled out right now is you'll either burn vacation or sick leave to cover, or not, I'm sorry, you'll cover vacation or holiday to get that Kelly Day time. I guess if you're out of vacation or holiday or whatever, you've got to come in and work to obviously make up that time.
That would be correct.
Okay. Okay, I mean, we'll dive into this one a little bit and try and figure this thing out.
I did have one question there on section 1. At the very end, it says as needed. Currently, that Kelly Day is there, and that's the whole thing, is that it's a forecasted day off. So the as needed is a little intriguing to me.
I will get you an answer to that question,
Yes, sir.
because it was clearly our concession or understanding on this, you know, and the, you know, the city manager said he's willing to do this, maintain the Kelly Day schedule under the proposal that's here, using either leave balances or callback, as a, you know, as a connection to and as a critical part of doing a 5-year deal with this staffing plan, okay? And so these kind of go together. We want to do this staffing plan, we want to do it on the 5-year model. We think that's good for both sides. And so the as needed there may or may not need to stay, because the point is, y'all made a really good argument that we don't want to disrupt the Kelly Day, whether you want to call it an entitlement or just the way it is, or
Sure.
what everybody's used to, or what everybody's built their life around. We get that, okay? And so that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'll follow up on that question.
Thank you.
Any scenario that you know of where somebody would normally have a Kelly Day doesn't have a Kelly Day?
So currently, which some of this was just somewhat fixed at the legislature, but we have guys that have military leave and they run out. And so they still get, quote unquote, their Kelly Day, but instead of burning additional leave because they're having to use it for their military time, they were working the back half. So they're basically getting half of that. But generally speaking, the only other time would be like an individual that's a new hire, he hasn't accrued the hours to have that time off. So if you know, and I think that's where y'all were going with the bottom section, if you
And so that
don't,
might be what it is right there, that
Well-
as needed. On the other hand, that individual can still be called back for work.
So a probationary firefighter, for example, like if they haven't accrued the hours to get that Kelly day,
Yeah.
they're gonna end up working more than 204 hours in a pay cycle.
Right.
So again, we're opening up that door of
Right.
potential overtime coming in. Again, it's kind of why we copy and pasted. How it originally was written was we're really getting into all sorts of worlds that I think we're all unfamiliar with, but definitely trying
Yeah.
to make it work.
Well, that's why I asked the question. Just want to figure out what the scenario is that has caused it historically to not have a Kelly day, so.
The only other situation that fairly common is when you end up going to a training class that's 40, 50-hour training class. Sometimes you end up working, you know, if your normal shift would have been Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, you go to class all week, but because you haven't met the 204 hours, you end up working 24 Sunday, class all week, 24 Saturday.
Gotcha.
Or they, you know, we'll shift Kelly days around for that work cycle. We try to work around it, and it gets to be a challenge for the battalion chiefs just to schedule. But that happens fairly regular with training.
But then the normal practice is try to work around it to where the Kelly day's preserved in that cycle, right?
The individual will work his 204 hours, but he might have to end up working 7 days straight, basically.
All right, we'll keep sorting that through. We appreciate your feedback on what we've tried to do there.
Yeah,
I
and-
hope you understand the context of us trying to say yes to
Yeah.
solving the Kelly Day problem that you brought to our
Yeah,
attention.
I think we're making good strides. We're heading in the right direction. I think there's just a little, unfortunately, this kind of stuff is super nuanced and like really particular.
Well, everything you change screws up something else.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to figure out. And we'll end up, like I said, we'll have something figured out for the shift duty investigators, but
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that, because I think everybody heard that this concessionaire agreement is connected to doing a 5-year deal, okay? And we understand that, you know, we're trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page about making that happen, and I just want to be really candid about this. I think that the proposal we have on the table to achieve that staffing over a long-term agreement in this city is a big win for your taxpayers, it is a big win for your members, and it's a big win for the city, okay? Because we're talking about a quality of service model. You're talking about maintaining competitive pay on the historical 80% model that you've got. I know, and we tried to make sure you understood from the city manager today, the stretch that it takes to say, we're gonna put the money on this, and we're gonna do it even though the last 3 years, we don't even really know where the money's gonna come from, but we're willing to commit to it. And so, I'm hoping that what your team is gonna do is go brag to your members about what a good deal this deal is, and that's what we're trying to do. And we recognize that the Kelly Day dynamic is we don't need to create some confusion and some problems and some staffing and lifestyle dynamics that all of a sudden I don't know when I'm working and when I'm not working and what my overtime looks like and so forth. So we're trying to solve that problem.
okay, well, I guess since we're being candid, I really think 5 years is gonna be an incredibly difficult sell to our members. Again, which is why I asked the question like, okay, if we go less than 5, can we modify the numbers a little bit? So we can fit accordingly in the budget. So we're really gonna have to look at that one and figure that one out. And again, I think the biggest thing for us with that proposal was we're trying to get people in seats. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? The way it's spelled out in here is those civil service positions can basically be allocated anywhere. I mean, fiscal year 26-27, for example, says 14 civil service positions. What's stopping the chief from saying, I want to use all 14 in training, or I want to use all 14 in dispatch, whatever it may be? There's nothing that puts in the initial proposal or counter, nothing that puts bodies in seats. I
Well,
mean,
let me make it clear. That's exactly what we intend for those people to be doing. That's what the chief intends to do, it's what the manager intends to do, so let's write it that way.
yeah, and I 100%
Right?
agree. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
need it in writing.
Nobody's playing any games,
Yeah.
and nobody's gonna be moving the pieces around on the board, okay?
Yeah, and then, I think we have, like I said, I think we have a proposal that kind of clears that up a little bit.
Is that something we can get this evening, you think?
I think so.
Okay.
Um,
Because we'd sure like to talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I think, again, the biggest thing for us is we're gonna have to navigate somehow this 5-year thing. And like I said, maybe we're willing to go down the path of, we'll just do, 3 years and we'll reassess in 3 years.
And obviously, I respect, and the manager respects, the chief respects y'all's membership choice on how to do that. Okay? My responsibility as an advocate for the city, and my responsibility as somebody who's done this for a long time and actually cares about what happens with your members is, I think you ought to grab this deal and do it. And that's just my personal opinion. Y'all have to make your own mind up about it. I think it's a rare opportunity, and I strongly suggest that that's the way we approach it. If we end up having to do, part of a loaf to begin with and try to reassemble it later, I just want to caution you that if you do that, you're taking a chance on 3 years from now, we don't have as many resources as we do now to make a commitment for years that we don't even know where we're going to get the money to pay for the handshake that we're proposing to make today. So that's the reality.
And Brian, usually when we start budgeting for positions, that money's taken out, we take it out at the beginning of the year, so it's not part of the process where we start competing for positions for other departments.
Right.
So you'll be giving that up if we go 3 years, because by then, all the positions might be filled all over the place,
Right.
and there's gonna be very minimal money. So I think it's just a budgeting cycle, it just sets it aside from the beginning every year, and you don't have to compete with the other departments.
So we will have certification pays tomorrow. We spent a good bit of time also today talking about that. And we have some movement and some flexibility on that. We want to make sure that you have those. And we'd like to hear back from you. If you have some further reply on maintenance of standards, we just went over our inventory, and that's one of the ones that we haven't talked about since we gave you a proposal.
Okay. I think we're working on maintenance standards. What else do we have?
Yes. You sent us a lateral hiring counter proposal. Can you tell us about that? Yeah.
Sure.
Put that on my
Yeah.
list.
Let me pull that up real quick.
I think first
So-
and foremost, we had a question in section 5C about why you struck departmental hiring standards. We weren't clear as to kind of the rationale, so if you could shed light on that.
I think I guess I'm just curious as to what departmental hiring standards are. I think the intention behind 143, the civil service process, is to make it a objective-based hiring process, not subjective. So just curious as to what the departmental hiring standards are. That's the only reason. I don't know what those are.
Okay, we'll get clarity.
And then,
That actually makes sense to me. As you know, under 143, you have you have a numerical ranking, and you got actually the selection process that has to happen is you get 3 people. And then you decide, do I take the top one or the number 2 or the number 3? If I take number 2, I have to say why, I have to say, so that's the way that works. And whether or not those are, the only thing the statute requires is that a valid reason be given for a passover off of the initial employee list. So I'm not sure myself, any more than you are, what the department hiring standards would be in that passover process that's a part of the statute. But we'll find out from the chief what other department standards that are there. I actually think we'll probably be on the same page about that. We don't have a problem with your objective on the paid department thing, except we'd like to say career department instead of paid.
Yep, that's what we meant to do.
Yeah.
So, and then I changed, so, section 3, number 1, I think the chief made a comment when he was laying this out, 21.
We're fine
I
with
think
that.
that just
Yep.
got oversight.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a problem with that deletion at the beginning. So I
Okay.
think we're pretty close to done on this one. I will find out what we're talking about on department hiring standards and whether or not we have an argument for preserving something above and beyond what's in the statute itself.
Yeah, I think the big thing for us on a lot of the changes on this one was just making it clear that it's strictly for starting pay. It's not, we just make it clear, it's not for seniority, promotions,
Gotcha.
probation, anything like that.
The city can't indemnify the association. City governments can't indemnify for liability of others under the Texas Constitution. And so we're hoping that that's not going to necessarily be a part of this. I've never heard of anybody having any meaningfully successful litigation under one of these lateral hiring programs.
So I think that section stems from the Department of Justice lawsuit in the city of Austin. I believe the Austin firefighters, could be wrong, where they found that partially blame on that. That's a dicey one. So
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that one.
Oh, yeah,
I was right in the middle of all that. I'll go back and take a look at that. We understand that the association is, we sign off on this article, you're agreeing to change 143, at our request. And we certainly don't want you sucked into a lawsuit where you have to spend your money on it. So we'll talk about how we can solve that problem. But it's just the city can't constitutionally indemnify y'all. I think that there's virtually no risk there for the association on one of these deals. I'm not sure, but I would predict that Matt Backup, right? Is probably going to tell you that this is not an issue that we need to figure out a way to solve in terms of insurance or defending or any of that other kind of stuff. I think Austin had a provision in their contract about defending the association under the articles. The city gets sued, the city's going to have to defend the case anyway.
Right.
And so a lot of times when you're at the courthouse, you've got somebody that's the primary defendant, and they're really doing all the laboring or work, and the other people are just kind of standing on the sideline saying, "Me too," and so that's the context that I want you to think about, because we don't think this is going to be a problem, and we don't think it's going to be risking your association bank account for a lawsuit that nobody wanted in the first place.
I guess from a practical standpoint on this one, if fire administration wanted to change the hiring requirements and stuff, couldn't they just go to the local civil service commission, have the rules changed locally? Was that?
Well, we can only change the statute itself by a contract. The commission can't change it.
Even the local, so we have local 143 rules as well.
You can change the local rules, but you can't change the fact that you have to
Right.
have a test
Right.
administered on the same day for everybody, blah, 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 under the statute.
Okay, just,
Yeah, otherwise you can't get these people in the
yeah,
department.
I'll just throw them out there, just,
Right.
it's been a very long day, and maybe I'm not thinking straight.
No. And anything that's in the Civil Service Commission rules can be changed by the
Right.
commission.
Sorry to have to resurrect the Austin case.
I had a
Well,
lot
blame-
of, I had a lot of fun in that case.
Blame Ralph.
You know,
on
you
that
know
one.
who, you know who the worldwide expert is on promotions and hiring in fire departments, right?
Who is that?
His last name is Nix.
Yeah.
I was reading your mind, though. I just wanted you to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Expert in all things.
We told
Just
them not to
asking.
do that,
Yeah.
just so you know. But we're not experts.
I think.
That's
the end of
our agenda for today.
Okay.
Anything else you need for us
No,
prepared tomorrow?
no, I mean, I think the big thing tomorrow, again, would help understanding kind of section B of the funding obligations article.
We're gonna fix that. We agree with you that we don't want the contract to be eliminated in the event that that happens.
Okay.
So we will work on some language to accomplish that result. Appreciate
What do you want to send them? Stuff that we've got worked on.
Let me look.
For later.
Trying to think here. I think. I mean, the only other thing is staffing. I mean, everything else is laid out. I mean, it sounds like most of the other articles are just little changes here and there amongst each other. So I don't think there's much from us at this point. Yeah, I got nothing else right now.
We appreciate y'all's time today very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, it does. Glad we're able to get down here and, like I said, hearing perspectives from the other people, I think helps make it easier. A lot of the stuff that we didn't, necessarily consider because our brain doesn't work that way. Our brain works in our way. So I think we're good for now.
So we're 9 a.m. again in the morning?
Yes. Man.